The chapter began with Chairman Go noticing a mysterious figure seated inside his office. He silently wondered if the being before him was capable of communication, for despite his gaze fixed upon it, he could not sense its presence at all. The realization struck him. This was not an opponent he could handle. The man finally spoke, declaring that the office they were in had been completely cut off from the outside world. As he raised his hand, frost began to form at his fingertips. Chairman Go was startled, questioning inwardly whether this was all just a dream. But the illusion shattered as a sudden blade of ice sliced across his shoulder, the wound freezing instantly. "Does the pain feel like a dream to you?" the man asked, grinning grimly. Chairman Go steadied himself and admitted aloud that this was reality. He demanded to know the stranger's identity. The man rose from his seat, replying that he had hoped Chairman Go would recognize him at once, but then dismissed him as nothing more than a mere human. The words shocked Chairman Go, his eyes widening. At that moment, the being released a surge of chilling blue energy, sending out a powerful shockwave. "I have no interest in trampling the weak," the man said coldly. "Show yourself, fragment of brilliant light. Or are you afraid that the vessel will shatter if you do?" His smile twisted as he added, "No matter. This vessel's life will soon end anyway. But if you are hiding because of fear, then you are no longer worth speaking to." A sphere of condensed ice and energy formed in his palm, which he hurled toward Chairman Go. Shielding himself with his arm, the chairman braced against the violent explosions that followed, the shock waves rattling the entire room. As the smoke cleared, the stranger froze. Two glowing yellow eyes gleamed back at him from within the haze. Alarmed, he conjured another blast of ice and launched it forward, but this time it met the clenched fist of Chairman Go. With a single swing of his arm, the chairman dispersed the attack entirely. The being sneered, calling him the greatest fragment of brilliant light. In response, Chairman Go stood tall, a blazing golden aura radiating from his body. "You managed to isolate this office into a dimensional gap," he admitted. "I am impressed." The man grinned. "I've searched for you for a long time. To think you'd be trapped inside a broken vessel, unable to wield your powers. We've already found all 7 of you, and crushed 2 so far. And now, I want to see that prideful face of yours twisted in panic before I destroy your vessel without regret." Fury flared within Chairman Go, his aura erupting even stronger. "Come, give me your best shot. Monarch of Frost." The monarch's gaze hardened. "So you choose to resist? How foolish. I have fully taken this body, while you merely borrow yours. Do you really think you can stand against me?" Ice spread rapidly across the office, engulfing the space. Crossing his arms, the monarch summoned a deadly surge of frost. Slashing his hand downward, spikes of ice shot forth toward Chairman Go's head. But instead of dodging, the chairman met the attack head-on, literally. With a violent headbutt, he shattered the ice to pieces, shards scattering across the floor. He immediately countered, dashing forward with a heavy punch aimed at the monarch. The attack narrowly missed as the monarch stepped aside, conjuring an ice sword in response. The blade slashed across Chairman Go's shoulder, cutting into his flesh and tearing his clothes. The chairman retaliated with another strike to the monarch's head, only for it to collide against a hastily raised ice shield. His blow shattered the shield to fragments. The battle intensified, their clash filling the room with shockwaves and explosions. But even as he fought fiercely, Chairman Go thought to himself that he needed to end this quickly while his body could still endure. Frost seeped from his lips as his fury mounted. Summoning all his strength, he charged with overwhelming speed and unleashed a devastating punch. The monarch blocked effortlessly and darted back, while Chairman Go collapsed to his knees, his body trembling. "Is this truly the extent of the vessel's strength?" the monarch taunted, smiling in disappointment. "How pitiful for a so-called fragment of brilliant light." In a blur, the monarch appeared before him, conjuring an ice spear that pierced straight into the chairman's chest. Blood trickled from the corner of Chairman Go's mouth as the monarch leaned in. "How long will it take you to find another vessel? A year? 2? Unfortunately, my army is already here. We will reduce this world to ruin long before your forces even arrive. Your mistake was protecting these humans. Did you really think you could defeat us while dividing your attention elsewhere? Do we seem weak to you?" The spear remained lodged in his chest, But Chairman Go smirked and gripped it firmly. "Do you think I chose to fight you for no reason?" The monarch frowned, caught off guard. The chairman continued, "Just as we did not expect you to imitate our methods, you overlooked a crucial variable." "And what is that?" the monarch demanded. Chairman Go's eyes blazed with light. He unleashed a massive sphere of energy, forcing the monarch to dodge as the blast tore into the wall, creating a violent explosion. Flames licked at the chairman's hand, burned by the intensity of the magic he had released. "That was close," the monarch muttered, grinning. "So, was that your trump card?" "Yes," Chairman Go answered calmly. Cracks spread across the damaged wall until it shattered completely. The monarch narrowed his eyes. "Is that what you were aiming for? That hardly changes anything." But Chairman Go's expression sharpened. "Now," he commanded. From the shadow behind him, an ant-like creature emerged. It darted through the shattered wall and out into the open. The monarch froze in disbelief. A denizen of chaos? What can a measly soldier accomplish? Yet the shadow left a black afterimage in its wake, pulling the monarch's focus entirely. Realizing something, he abandoned Chairman Go and leapt after it, his eyes burning with intent. Outside, the monarch pursued the shadow ant, conjuring an enormous ice scythe as he descended. With a powerful swing, he unleashed a devastating slash. But the strike never landed as intended. To his shock, the scythe was caught mid-swing, gripped effortlessly by another hand. Standing before him was none other than Storm-Jinwoo. Without hesitation, Jinwoo seized the monarch by the throat. His cold gaze pierced into the enemy as he asked, "Are you an ice elf?" The chapter begins with the Monarch of Frost speaking while Jinwoo grips him tightly by the throat. Despite being restrained, the monarch calmly remarks that he can sense the vast multitude of soldiers hidden within Jinwoo's shadow. He calls him the Monarch of Shadows and questions why Jinwoo never sought him out despite commanding such a powerful army. At that moment, Jinwoo suddenly recalls Baruka, the ice elf he once failed to extract as a shadow soldier. The memory irritates him. Something he had already forgotten now resurfaces. The monarch studies him closely, wondering aloud if Jinwoo could be the crucial variable that Chairman Go once mentioned. Before Jinwoo can act, a chilling aura surges in the monarch's mouth. A moment later, he exhales a deadly breath of ice, blasting forward in successive explosions that tear across the ground. Jinwoo quickly evades, forced to retreat under the assault. As Jinwoo studied the attack, he wondered whether the enemy was a mage type. Summoning a dagger into his hand, he slashed cleanly through an enormous block of ice, shattering it into countless fragments. Yet, before the clash could escalate further, the monarch abruptly declared that he had seen enough for today, that he had no intention of fighting with his life on the line. Jinwoo is stunned by the words, only to see the monarch point toward Chairman Go's location. With a twisted grin, he mocks Jinwoo, asking if he had not come to rescue that frail human. Jinwoo's heart pounds as he recalls that the shadow ant he left to guard the chairman was his exchange anchor. His eyes widen in horror as he notices Chairman Go slumped near a broken wall, a gaping wound carved into his chest by the Monarch of Frost. The monarch then conjures an ice spear and points it directly at the wounded chairman. "Now choose," he sneers. "Fight me, or save that human." With a flick of his hand, the spear hurtles through the air with a sharp swoosh. Jinwoo immediately activates Commander's authority, unleashing a surge of power from his palm to halt the spear. But a system alert flashes before his eyes. The opponent's mana is resistant to Commander's authority. The spear continues its deadly trajectory, while the monarch smirks at Jinwoo's desperate face. In a powerful leap, Jinwoo dashes forward, hurling his dagger to intercept. But the spear shifts midair, dodging the blade, which embeds uselessly into a building window. The weapon speeds ever closer to the chairman. At the last possible moment, a shadowed figure shrouded in vivid purple aura bursts into view. It is Jinwoo himself. His energy crackles and swirls violently around him as he deflects the spear, redirecting it into another building where it explodes with devastating force. On the ground, Jinwoo glares furiously at the Monarch of Frost, who has already begun creating a gate resembling a dungeon portal to escape. Without hesitation, Jinwoo summons his daggers and, using Ruler's authority, suspends them in the air before launching them forward with the command, "Dagger Rush." The Monarch manages to deflect most of the blades, but one buries itself into his shoulder. With a grimace, he admits in disbelief that a mere vessel managed to wound him. With a chilling smile, he steps back into the gate. Very well. I, the Monarch of Frost, will retreat for now. But when your shadow opens once more, I will be waiting. As for that old man, he gestures at Chairman Go. Take that soon-to-be corpse and add him to your army of the dead. Consider it my gift. His mocking laughter echoes as he disappears. That bastard, Jinwoo growls, fury burning in his voice. He rushes to Chairman Go's side. To his horror, he realizes he hadn't sensed the chairman until now, likely due to a barrier the Monarch erected. Blood flows endlessly from the old man's chest. Jinwoo curses under his breath. It's already too late for a healing potion. Desperately, he summons Beru and orders him to save the chairman at all costs. Beru obeys immediately, but soon admits that his healing magic has no effect. Chairman Go's breaths grow shallow. Jinwoo thinks of using the holy water of life, but before he can act, the chairman weakly grips his hand. Don't, he whispers, his voice frail. With a faint smile, he thanks Jinwoo for coming to his side. Please, just hang on. I'll take you to a hospital. Jinwoo pleads, but the chairman shakes his head. It's no use. No human can withstand the power that struck me. I have faced the will of a supreme being. He spoke of their plan, of the battles yet to come, and of the duties that must be fulfilled. Jinwoo's face tightened with worry as he cried out the chairman's name, but the elder found solace in his presence. With a faint, weary smile, he whispered, I'm relieved that you are here, and grateful that someone like you possesses such power. Thank God. Blood trickles from his lips as he continues. The gates and dungeons, they weren't for us. It was how they chose to protect humanity. His voice weakens, yet he musters the strength to add, someday, you will face a decision. When that day comes, please stand on the side of humanity. Tears fall from his eyes. He admits he once wished to fight alongside young hunters like Jinwoo, but his body was too frail. Still, he has no regrets, knowing he can entrust the future to the next generation. After countless heartbeats, I knew I didn't have much time left. But even so, my heart kept beating, no matter how weak the pulse, so that I could meet you. His fading smile lingered as he whispered, That's right, it was to meet you. What a relief. With trembling lips, he murmured his final words. Thank you. And then, his hand slipped from Jinwoo's grasp, falling lifelessly to the floor. The shards of ice scattered in the room crumble, the windows shatter, and silence descends as Jinwoo sits in grief beside the chairman's body. The scene shifted as raindrops began to fall softly on the trees, eventually turning into heavy autumn rains accompanied by chilling gusts of wind. During this time, several breaking news stories dominated the front pages of newspapers around the world. Brazil's great hunter, Jonas, was found dead by a river. The chairman of the Korean Hunters Association, Go Gun-hee, had been brutally murdered, suffering a fatal stab wound to his chest. Meanwhile, Sung Jinwoo had already returned to Korea. Christopher Reed, the great hunter Jonas, and now Chairman Go Gun-hee. All three had perished in succession. The deaths of these world-renowned hunters spread fear across the globe, plunging humanity into a state of panic. Major media outlets continued to cover the tragedies for days on end, while the Federal Bureau of Hunters released official statements regarding the events. For years, hunters had been the protectors of civilians. But now, a chilling question arose. Who would protect the hunters themselves? The deaths of the world's greatest hunters had awakened a new level of terror in society. The scene then shifted to Chairman Go's funeral. Heavy rain poured as his coffin, draped with the South Korean flag, was lowered into the ground. Raindrops splashed against the wooden surface of his coffin, as if the very skies were mourning his loss. Standing among the mourners, Jinwoo turned to Woo Jinchul, who stood quietly at his side. Are you all right? Jinwoo asked. Jinchul shook his head lightly and apologized. I'm sorry. I've been a little out of it lately. His voice trembled before he asked, Mr. Sung, that beast who murdered the chairman, was it really unstoppable, even with your power? Jinwoo's expression darkened. By the time I arrived, he was already. His words trailed off, drowned by the sound of raindrops pattering on their umbrellas. Jinchul tilted his head back, letting the rain wash over his face as his tears mingled with the downpour. His voice cracked with grief. Just the day before, he told me he wanted to hear about our trip to the United States. He urged me to hurry back, but now he's gone. His words faltered as he turned to Jinwoo, whispering, "Thank you for being with him in his final moments." But Jinwoo shook his head firmly. "No, don't thank me, not yet. I swear on my life, I will kill that bastard. I will hunt down the beast that murdered the chairman." His gaze hardened as he stared at Go Gunny's grave. "So please, don't thank me until then." He then asked Jinchul to gather the reporters for a statement. Though tears welled in his eyes, what shone more clearly was not sorrow, but unyielding fury. The scene shifted again. Despite the somber atmosphere following Chairman Go's death, reporters crowded into the press conference Jinwoo had requested. He stood before them, cameras flashing, microphones pointed at him, the air heavy with anticipation. There exists a group of beasts, highly intelligent and far stronger than any hunter alive, Jinwoo declared. They will use any means necessary to achieve their goals, and they are now targeting the world's top hunters. One reporter raised a question. "When you say a group of beasts, do you mean the creature that killed Chairman Go wasn't acting alone?" Jinwoo's gaze sharpened. "These beasts use powerful magic to isolate their targets before striking. For those who may be potential targets, I urge you, stay close to your colleagues, those strong enough to protect you." A memory flashed in Jinwoo's mind. The creature that had slain Go Gun, introducing itself as the Monarch of Frost. It bore the same title as the Monarch of the Beginning. With that truth, Jinwoo realized, not even the strongest hunter in the world could stand against such beings. Turning back to the reporters, he concluded, "For those without colleagues to rely on, please contact me directly through the Korean Hunters Association." The chapter ended with this declaration, signaling the true beginning of the Battle of the Monarchs. The chapter opened inside a dark, misty cave. Amidst the jagged rock formation stood 5 beings, each radiating an aura of a distinct color. Among them was the Monarch of Frost, the very one who had previously clashed with Jinwoo. The Monarch of Frost spoke first, declaring that the Monarch of Shadows was currently on Earth. One of his companions, cloaked in a purple aura, responded in disbelief. He had thought no human vessel could possibly contain the power of the Shadow Monarch. He questioned if this was also the reason why the Dragon King could not descend to Earth. The Monarch of Frost answered firmly. He had seen it with his own 2 eyes. The Shadow Monarch was far more dangerous than the fragments of brilliant light themselves. "I will get rid of him," he vowed. Then he asked his companions, "Will you help me?" A tall man with blonde hair, emanating a crimson aura, one of the same figure who had attacked Christopher Reed, noted coldly that choosing to fight the Shadow Monarch was equivalent to choosing death. Out of the 9 monarchs who reigned over chaos, the Shadow Monarch was among the strongest. Instead, he suggested waiting for the Monarch of Destruction, the Dragon King, to return. The Monarch of Frost clenched his injured shoulder, still scarred from Jinwoo's dagger. "We may be on the run for now, but we are still monarchs," he argued. "How much longer do you expect us to rely solely on the Dragon King? This is our chance to eliminate the Shadow Monarch while he is still in human form. Fight with me, and I will take responsibility. I will send him back into nothingness." But the blonde-haired monarch shook his head. "Count me out." Another also refused, unwilling to risk ending up like the Monarch of Flames. A monarch cloaked in a yellow aura called them cowards, but one of the others quickly defended their decision. "You know what happened to the Monarch of White Flames? I don't want to be caught by the Shadow Monarch's authority and fall into eternal slumber." Another monarch mused aloud, believing that the Shadow Monarch could not subject their astral bodies to his authority. But the blonde-haired monarch interjected again. "It seems the Shadow Monarch and the Architect joined forces. That is why he can create replicas of us. I'd rather not end up as one of his pawns." 2 monarchs turned away, stepping through a portal that resembled a dungeon gate, leaving only 3 behind. One of those who remained asked the Monarch of Frost if he had proof that the Shadow Monarch was still human. The Frost Monarch glanced at his dagger and replied that it had been coated in poison, something the true Ashborn would never have done. At the mention of poison, a woman with glowing red eyes and an aura of swirling green energy let out a sinister laugh. "You're right. If the Monarch of Shadows were truly in control of the human's body, he wouldn't have resorted to such a petty trick. The Monarch of Frost asked if he could count on her support. She smiled darkly. "I'll help you." Another Monarch, his eyes glowing yellow and fangs bared, growled in agreement. "Let's kill the Shadow Monarch." The scene shifted to Seoul. Rain poured heavily, city lights reflecting off the drenched streets. From televisions across the city, citizens watched broadcasts about the memorial for Chairman Go. His words were remembered by many. Think carefully about who will protect your life if another S-rank gate were to appear. You won't be able to buy back your life, no matter how many hundreds, no, thousands of times more than the price of your house. Others recalled the time on Jeju Island when Storm-Jinwoo fight against the ant colony. The chairman had said then that he could finally die in peace, knowing his lifelong wish had been fulfilled. But none expected him to pass away so soon. High above the city, Storm-Jinwoo stood atop a skyscraper, his hood drawn, raindrops sliding down his body. He thought to himself that he could not sense the mana of the Monarch of Frost. As he suspected, the plan wouldn't work. His system window appeared, revealing that his level had reached 133, with his current stats, HP, MP, Strength, Agility, Sense, Intelligence, and Fatigue, displayed beneath. He remembered his battle with the Frost Monarch. The Monarch had no shadow. The King of Giants had once explained that monarchs and rulers were beings made of astral bodies. They could never become shadow soldiers. That must be why the monarchs left no shadows. For a moment, Jinwoo realized he had lost one of his best ways to track them. It doesn't matter. As long as I am a hunter, I won't allow my prey to escape. Dark energy pulsed outward from him, his aura spreading across the city below. At the Korean Hunters Association headquarters, a week had passed since Chairman Go's death. The board gathered to decide his successor. One of the panel members spoke. "The fact that our chairman was an S-rank hunter carried great significance. Now that we have lost such a monumental figure, who will oversee the 5 major guilds?" Another asked if they were suggesting recruiting an S-rank to the association. While high-ranking hunters held influence, they needed to be cautious about bringing in outsiders. "What then do you suggest?" another pressed. After much discussion, the directors reached a decision. "We recommend Mr. Woo Jin-chul as the new chairman," one announced, pointing toward him. Jin-chul was stunned. "Why me?" A member answered warmly. "As the late chairman's right hand, you have learned the practical skills necessary for the role. You also possess the leadership required to rally hunters. Nowhere is it written that the chairman must be an S rank. What we need is someone respected and feared by hunters. You have spent years managing and arresting hunters as surveillance team chief. You are the most suitable candidate." But Jin-chul shook his head. "In many respects, I am not the best choice. There are other hunters who hold higher positions. And aren't I too young? There's the vice chairman, the directors, and all the regional managers gathered here today. Why me, when there are better candidates?" Another panelist explained calmly. "Neither I nor the other executives can mobilize Korea's strongest forces. But you can. You are on good terms with the major guilds. Above all, you are well acquainted with Storm-Jinwoo." The room grew quiet. The panel added that they would not force him, but they asked that he give the decision careful thought. Jin-chul gazed silently at the chairman's empty seat, deep in contemplation. Meanwhile, in the United States, at the Scavenger Guild headquarters, Guildmaster Thomas Andre descended in an elevator with his secretary, Laura. "It's been a while since I've come down to the basement," Thomas remarked. The guards stationed there stood abruptly in surprise at his arrival. "Sit down," he told them. "You look too tense." Thomas pressed his finger against a scanner, unlocking a heavy gate. As they walked deeper, Laura asked quietly, "Are you really going to give this away as a gift?" Thomas asked, "Does it seem excessive in exchange for the lives of my guild members?" Laura quickly shook her head. "No, not at all. But still." They reached another security gate, which opened with Thomas's fingerprint. He chuckled at her hesitation. "Do you think Jinwoo is unqualified to use it?" Laura said nothing more. Beyond the gate, a distant object radiated a dark, powerful aura. Thomas's lips curled into a grin. "It never fails to impress me. There are only 2 of these in the entire world," Laura whispered. "And it will always remain that way." "I'm sure it will," Thomas replied. Laura asked again, "And yet, you're still determined to give it away?" "That's exactly why," Thomas answered. Leaving the world's best weapon here to rot would be a waste. Better to put it in the hands of someone worthy. The chapter closed with the image of 2 daggers, brimming with immense magical power. The chapter opened with breaking news announcing that the Korean Hunter Association had officially appointed Woo Jin-chul as the new chairman. Upon seeing the broadcast, Gina reacted with surprise. She recalled hearing rumors that the former chairman had been murdered, but she never expected Woo Jin-chul to take his place. Looking out the window, she muttered that not only was the country in chaos, but so was the entire world. Turning her gaze back inside, she saw her mother washing the dishes. Gina quietly approached, wrapped her arms around her mother from behind, and leaned against her shoulder. Her mother, without pausing her task, told her that if she had free time, she could at least throw out the food waste. Gina lazily replied that she was too tired to do even that. A brief silence followed before Gina suddenly spoke. "Mom, let's move." Her mother glanced at her in surprise, but Gina nodded firmly. Her mother smiled faintly and admitted she still liked their old house. Gina, however, looked puzzled. "What's so great about this rundown apartment?" she asked. "It's old," her mother replied softly, "but I prefer it here." Unable to argue, Gina fell silent, though her expression carried a trace of sadness. Her mother then brightened, cheerfully reminding her daughter to at least fold the laundry, calling her a sweet daughter. Gina sighed, muttering that she only ever got called sweet when chores were involved. She opened the laundry room door to retrieve the clothes, but froze when something outside the window caught her eye. Alarmed, she immediately called for her mother. The scene shifted to the front of the Il-Hwan Guild office, where reporters and crowds had gathered in large numbers. 2 men conversed within the crowd. "Are the rumors true? Is he really visiting the Il-Hwan Guild right now?" one asked. "Yes, apparently so," the other replied. The first shook his head in disbelief. "I can't believe it. Thomas Andre is inside the office." Inside the guild office, Thomas Andre stood tall, his overwhelming presence filling the room. Seated nearby was Jinho, who wore a forced smile as beads of sweat dripped down his face. The guild staff were equally stunned to see such a legendary figure in their office. Their shock only deepened when they realized Lennart Nierman, Germany's strongest hunter and ranked 12th in the Federal Bureau's global rankings, had also arrived. Panicked, Jinho desperately tried to reach Jinwoo by phone, but every call went unanswered. Meanwhile, Thomas Andre looked amused, a faint smile on his lips, as though he were growing impatient. Jinho's thoughts raced. "Where are you, sir? Please, pick up the call." Even Lennart was astonished. If even Thomas Andre had come here to meet Jinwoo, it spoke volumes about Sung Jinwoo's growing influence. Lennart himself wondered if he might finally get the chance to meet Korea's strongest hunter. Thomas suddenly spoke. Through his assistant Laura's translation, he asked if Sung Jinwoo was perhaps in the middle of a raid, since he didn't seem to frequent his office often. A flustered Jinho stammered, "Ah yes, probably." Just then, the office door swung open. Sung Jinwoo entered. Relief washed over the guild staff, and Jinho burst into tears of joy. Thomas Andre greeted him with a wave, while Jinwoo quickly grasped why the press had gathered outside. It wasn't because of him, but because of Thomas Andre's presence, and the powerful aura radiating from the American hunter confirmed it. Jinho hurried over, asked Jinwoo for ignoring his calls. Jinwoo casually replied that he had been a little busy. His tattered clothes explained the rest. Gates had been spawning rapidly across the country, leaving him little time to rest. Quietly, he also noted that both Beru and Igris were nearing their next ranks. Thomas then stepped forward. "It's been a while, Mr. Sung," he said warmly. Jinho, tense, thought to himself, "They're not going to fight here, are they?" Jinwoo calmly asked why Thomas had come to Korea. Thomas reminded him of their earlier promise, to share a meal once his arm had healed. He added that he had brought a very special gift. Jinwoo wondered at the word gift, but Thomas insisted they speak elsewhere, saying it was too dangerous to hand it over inside the guild. Jinho grew suspicious, thinking it might be a trap, while Jinwoo considered what Thomas could possibly mean by dangerous. Before continuing, Jinwoo asked about the other hunter in the room. Lennart stepped forward and introduced himself. Jinwoo considered whether he might be one of the hunters requesting protection, but Thomas abruptly cut the introduction short. "Shall we get going, Mr. Sung?" Thomas pressed, ignoring Lennart. When Leonard protested, saying he had waited 2 hours for the chance to meet Jinwoo, Thomas's eyes gleamed with a terrifying glow. His refusal was blunt. "No, what we will discuss is top secret. There's no room for you." Leonard clenched his fists, seething at the humiliation. He had never been treated so dismissively before, but he could do nothing. With that, Thomas led Jinwoo away. Later, they sat across from each other at a restaurant, with several agents and Thomas's assistant Laura standing nearby. Snapping his fingers, Thomas ordered a long briefcase to be placed on the table. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "What is this?" Thomas explained that this was his way of repaying Jinwoo for sparing the lives of his guild members. Opening the case, he revealed 2 crimson daggers, their edges shimmering with raw power. Jinwoo's eyes widened in shock. "Kamish." Thomas grinned. "Impressive. You recognized them at a single glance." Jinwoo asked in disbelief whether Kamish remains were still not in the Bureau's possession. Thomas explained that the U.S. government had wanted them to hand over the carcass, so they eventually surrendered it, seeing greater value in other opportunities. The largest Fong, which had once pierced Thomas himself, was given to him as a keepsake. Too short to be crafted into a sword, he instead reforged it into a pair of daggers. Who knew that decision would pay off in spades? Thomas chuckled. "They're yours now." Jinwoo's system immediately registered the weapons, Kamish Wrath. Each dagger carried an attack boost of plus 1,500, crafted from the sharpest Fong of a dragon by a master craftsman. Their sharpness was unmatched, their mana sensitivity exceptional, and their true potential would scale with their wielder's power. Jinwoo was astonished. Jinwoo marveled. He had always believed the Demon King's daggers were powerful, but compared to these, they were nothing. Testing them, he flipped the blades skillfully in his hands, the red aura flaring as if responding to him directly. Thomas quickly stopped him. "Careful. Even with reinforcement, you might cut me in half. You're not planning on killing me with the gift I just gave you, are you?" He joked nervously. The aura grew darker and stronger, as though greeting Jinwoo as its rightful master. The agents and Laura were left speechless at the sight. Thomas turned to his assistant. "Still think giving this to him was a mistake?" Laura, unable to find her voice, only shook her head. Thomas looked back to Jinwoo. "So, do you like them?" Jinwoo hesitated. "Are you sure I can accept them for free?" "Free." Thomas laughed. "These daggers are a cheap price to pay for the lives of my guild members. Consider it settled." Jinwoo finally nodded. "Then I'll gladly accept." Thomas smiled broadly. But before their conversation could continue, both men suddenly stiffened. A powerful disturbance filled the air. "Did you feel that just now?" Thomas asked. Jinwoo nodded grimly. Outside, crowds of people stared upward, their faces pale with fear. Is this what Dr. Belzer mentioned during the conference? The magic energy gathering above the skies. Jinwoo thought. Thomas removed his sunglasses, staring in disbelief. Above Seoul, the sky rippled with an enormous purple vortex. Could this really be larger than the one Kamish emerged from? He muttered. The chapter ended with his grim question. Are we now dealing with forces beyond comprehension? The chapter opened with people in the streets of Seoul staring up at the sky, unease written across their faces. Many held up their phones, recording the enormous gate that loomed over the city like a second sky. A reporter's voice echoed in the broadcast. Above me is a gate that has completely covered the skies of Seoul. According to our sources, this is the largest gate to appear since the dawn of the magical beasts. As you can see, countless residents have come outside to witness this phenomenon, but not a single one looks relieved. The man signed off with a grim tone. This is Nick Powell, reporting for BBN. The scene shifted to Dr. Belzer, seated in a global conference meeting. He addressed the panel with a grave expression. As I warned earlier, we have detected a massive concentration of mana accumulating in the skies. What we are witnessing over Seoul is only the beginning. From here on, we can expect to see gates of this terrifying scale appearing in other countries as well. A committee member then asked, are you suggesting that this unusual activity has already been observed in other parts of the world? Dr. Belzer nodded. Precisely. That is the point I wish to emphasize. Another official asked, given your experience researching gates and magical beasts, what would be the wisest way to respond to this situation? The room fell silent as Dr. Belzer paused, then uttered only a single, chilling answer. We must pray. Pray that this unprecedented event does not end in tragedy. Meanwhile, in Seoul, Jinwoo rode atop Kaisel, soaring toward the massive purple gate that blanketed the city. As he drew near, something felt off. Despite his proximity, he could not enter. It's as if some invisible wall is blocking me, he thought. If it had been an ordinary barrier, he would have smashed through it, but this was different. A gate that an awakened being cannot enter? Then are the beasts inside different from anything I've faced before? He glanced down at the sprawling city below. His family, his friends, and everyone he cared for were there. Whatever lay within the gate, he had no intention of letting it run loose. His phone vibrated. The caller ID showed Woo Jinshul. Can you hear me? Your voice keeps cutting out, Jinshul said. Jinwoo replied. No need to call back. I'm somewhere high up right now. By the way, shouldn't I start calling you chairman from now on? Jinshul chuckled softly. Call me whatever you like. Honestly, I still feel awkward about this promotion. It's more than I deserve. Jinwoo's tone grew serious. Were you able to look into what I asked about? Yes. I reached out to hunter management agencies in several countries. We had them run satellite scans, but not a single new gate has spawned anywhere else in the world. Jinwoo froze. Are you saying that aside from this enormous gate, not one new gate has appeared? That's correct, Jinshul confirmed. Jinwoo frowned. It's been 3 hours since this gate emerged. What are the odds that every gate across the globe would vanish at the exact same time? He muttered to himself. This isn't just a coincidence. Jinshul continued. Our plan is to begin evacuating civilians near the gate, then proceed step by step to minimize the chaos. What about you, Mr. Sung? What's your plan? Though Jinwoo could not predict what tomorrow would bring, his answer was firm. Someone has to plant the apple tree. With that, he ended the call, his gaze never leaving the ominous gate above him. The scene shifted to the Hunter Association Gymnasium, where Jinwoo sparred with Beru. The Ant King unleashed a flurry of strikes, each faster than the last, but Jinwoo dodged them with effortless precision. When Beru lunged for a crushing blow, Jinwoo simply leaned aside, then caught his wrist mid-swing. The clash stopped instantly. Beru looked up, eyes wide. Jinwoo asked calmly, Are you really giving it your all? The shadow ant yanked his hand free and dropped to one knee. My king, how could I possibly? It's fine, Jinwoo reassured him. I just wanted to break a sweat. And you're the only one who can help me do that. Deeply moved, Beru bowed even lower. Your words, they honor me beyond measure. Jinwoo smirked. Your vocabulary is growing every day. You didn't eat another human, did you? Anyway, let's get started, he said, his body igniting with a purple aura. Beru let out a piercing screech, his claws carving deep scars into the floor, showing his level that had reached its maximum. With explosive speed, he launched at Jinwoo again. The strike gouged the ground, but Jinwoo had already moved. Punches, claws, and slashes rained down, each blocked, parried, or dodged with casual ease. Pretty strong now, aren't you? Especially as commander, Jinwoo remarked, countering with a blow to Beru's stomach. But in any army, there can only be one commander. Once Igris and Greed become generals, they'll catch up to you in no time. So if you don't want to lose your position, you'd better try harder. Beru's rage flared, and he unleashed a relentless barrage. Explosions rattled the gym, but still Jinwoo held his ground. To him, Beru, the strongest of his soldiers, was still far from strong enough to face the enemies yet to come. Jinwoo seized Beru's arm and slammed it into the floor, immobilizing him before delivering a crushing blow to his side. Beru's body was hurled across the room, crashing into the wall and leaving it cracked and smoking. Kneeling before his king, Beru gasped, My king, I, your lowly servant, am left in awe of your almighty power. Jinwoo sighed. You really need to lay off those historical dramas. Beru lowered his head, silent, a trace of sorrow in his eyes as he healed himself. Glancing at the devastation, Jinwoo muttered, Well, now that the test is over, I'd better clean up this mess. Later, he reported to Chairman Wu, explaining, I still have about 300 ants to handle the cleanup, so... The chapter then shifted to a luxury hotel in Seoul, where Thomas Andre and his assistant, Laura, were staying. Do you plan to stay here long? Laura asked. How could I leave behind something so big and beautiful? Thomas replied, staring out the window at the colossal gate. Laura raised a brow. It's certainly big, but beautiful. Thomas grinned. Anything that makes the heart race is beautiful. A fire-breathing dragon, that massive gate, Storm-Jinwoo's power, they're all things of beauty. And I've always wanted everything beautiful for myself. Laura scoffed softly. Looks like there's finally something you can't have, Mr. Andre. Thomas chuckled. I didn't think that was possible. Still, what's the point of going home when no new gates are spawning anywhere else? The Bureau may be worried, but really, what's there to fear? The safest place in the world right now is by Storm-Jinwoo's side. Besides, if this gate isn't stopped, there won't be anything left to worry about. His gaze returned to the sky, wine glass in hand, the enormous gate reflected in his eyes. I want to see for myself, he murmured, whether this will be the end of mankind or the beginning of something new. The chapter began with the bustling streets of Seoul, filled with people rushing to evacuate. Car horns blared endlessly as long lines of vehicles clogged the roads, leaving the streets in complete chaos. The scene then shifted to Jinwoo's home. Gina asked their mother if they should also evacuate. Their mother calmly replied, well, if this place turns into a war zone, wouldn't it be better for us to choose where we die? Besides, the houses in this district haven't been ordered to evacuate. Gina protested, saying that she would be entering college next year, that she would soon be old enough to drink, and that she wanted to move out and enjoy her college life. With frustration in her voice, she added, I don't want to die just when my life is about to start. Her mother gave a small smile and admitted she had a point, then reassured her daughter. Jinwoo will protect us, just like your father once did. The perspective then moved to the rooftop of a tall building where Jinwoo sat alone, deep in thought. Even now, he could not sense the presence of the Monarchs. He wondered where they might be hiding. His eyes drifted toward the massive dungeon gate, and he reminded himself that he was the one who had to stop it. But even if he did, could he truly achieve victory without sacrifices? Jinwoo reflected that he now had so much to protect. If this was indeed the end, who should he spend his last moments with? He opened his phone and scrolled through his contacts, his family, his guild, the association, and other allied guilds. As he scrolled further, he came across the list of his friends. The scene then shifted to a dojo where Hunter Cha Hae-in was training. Her coach, Mr. Song, told her to stop, saying that he had sensed hesitation in her movements lately. I can tell by the tip of your sword, he said, concerned that fear had taken root in her heart. He added with a chuckle, but I suppose it's only natural. Even I'm terrified. Though, I can't be sure if the monsters I once faced compare to the ones that cost me my arm. Just then, Hae-in's phone vibrated. Mr. Song noticed her glance and apologized for rambling, urging her to answer. A hunter should always answer their phone, he said warmly. Hae-in gave an apologetic smile before taking the call. Her face turned serious as she listened. Moments later, she bowed to her coach. Something came up. I have to go, she said. Mr. Song nodded with understanding. Of course, go right ahead. As she left, he smiled to himself. I see. I may have gotten a little carried away. The story shifted again, this time to an amusement park. People gasped in surprise as they recognized the man walking through the crowd. Wait, isn't that Storm-Jinwoo? One whispered. Whoa, it really is him, another exclaimed. A few murmured in shock upon realizing that the woman beside him was Cha Hae-in from the Hunters Guild. Jinwoo, surprised by the crowd, had expected the park to be nearly empty considering the ongoing crisis, yet it was quietly packed. Hae-in, on the other hand, looked flustered and shy under the attention. She asked Jinwoo if he liked amusement parks. He admitted, not particularly, but I always wanted to come here at least once. When she asked why he had chosen her, he smiled. Because you're my only friend. Startled, Hae-in froze as Jinwoo gently asked if she remembered what she had once said in front of that strange statue. Hae-in recalled the time she told the statue, I'm a friend who's here to rescue him. Remembering those words made her blush furiously. Embarrassed, she stammered, You heard that? Jinwoo chuckled. Yeah, I have better hearing than most. Hae-in quickly changed the subject, asking what was inside that strange dungeon. Jinwoo replied that he would explain it another time, once he had sorted everything out himself. As they walked, Hae-in suddenly noticed Jinwoo's shadows blocking people who tried to approach them. She asked, Don't you think this is attracting even more attention? Jinwoo smirked. It's fine, as long as they can't bother us. Hae-in thought to herself that it had been 2 years since she became a hunter, and she couldn't remember the last time she went out just for fun. Her heart felt unusually light. Being with Jinwoo felt different, and he had a special scent. Then Jinwoo pointed toward a ride. "Do you want to try that one?" Hae-in smiled and agreed. He pointed at another, and another, asking if she liked them all. She laughed softly and answered, "Yes, every single one." Jinwoo realized with a smile that she, too, wanted to be there. "All right then, let's go for a ride." The two spent the afternoon riding the roller coaster, the drop tower, and even a haunted house. Yet through every ride, their faces remained calm and unreadable, while the other passengers screamed in terror. Afterward, as they sat down to eat, Jinwoo asked if she wasn't having fun. Hae-in quickly replied, "No, I am. A lot of fun." She slurped her drink, but Jinwoo eyed her curiously. "You didn't scream even once. Were the rides too slow for an S-rank hunter?" Caught off guard, Hae-in admitted shyly, "Yeah." Jinwoo then smiles and asked, "Then how about we ride something truly thrilling?" Her eyes widened in surprise at his words. The next moment, the sky above blazed with radiant colors, warm yellows, pinks, and pale oranges. A mighty beast soared upward, carrying them into the heavens. It was Kaisel, Jinwoo's majestic mount. The brilliant sky, painted with light and clouds, seemed to stretch infinitely. Smiling, Jinwoo asked, "What do you think?" All was written across Hae-in's face. "We're so high up, and it's beautiful," she whispered, gazing at the breathtaking view that filled her with both wonder and serenity. She then asked why Jinwoo chose to visit the amusement park when he could experience something like this. He answered quietly, "The gate where my father went missing spawned at that park. That's why I wanted to visit it." Hae-in thanked him earnestly, confessing that she had received so much help from him. Jinwoo smiled and said there was still something else he wanted to show her. The scene transitioned from a bustling construction site at sunset to a soft, pink-tinted sky, and finally to a clear, star-filled night. Jinwoo and Hae-in sat on the grass, gazing up at the countless stars above. Hae-in's face was full of wonder as she turned to Jinwoo with a shy, genuine smile. The chapter ended with a shooting star streaking across the night sky. In its glow, their silhouettes were shown. Hae-in leaning gently against Sung Jinwoo beneath the stars. The chapter opened with a massive purple dungeon gate looming in the skies above Seoul. Outside the Korean Hunter Association building, a hunter in an orange jacket stared anxiously at the gate, his mind heavy with unease. He knew it would open within a few days, and as a B-rank hunter, he couldn't afford to let his guard down. While walking away, still lost in thought, someone suddenly bumped into his shoulder. Irritated, he turned to glare at the stranger. "What the hell?" he snapped, only to find himself face to face with a towering man radiating an intimidating presence. The stranger's terrifying yellow eyes glowed faintly, sending chills down his spine. Other hunters nearby noticed the confrontation and began whispering among themselves. Some wondered if a fight had broken out, while others commented on the massive man's intimidating aura, joking that even Ma Dong-wook would struggle against him. Questions quickly arose. Was this man even a hunter? After all, only hunters remained in Seoul now. A few muttered that if the B-rank wasn't careful, he'd be leaving in an ambulance. The B-rank hunter, growing angrier, demanded an apology. He reminded himself that he was no longer a lowly subordinate licking his boss's boots. He was an upper-tier B-rank now, and he wouldn't let anyone look down on him. Squaring his shoulders, he declared, "If you just stand there glaring, you should at least admit your fault and ask for forgiveness." But before he could finish speaking, the towering man suddenly opened his mouth. Sharp fangs gleamed as his eyes glowed a menacing red. In the next instant, he lunged forward and bit the hunter's head clean off. The surrounding hunters froze in horror, screams echoing through the hall as blood sprayed across the floor. The massive figure spat the blood aside, unfazed, as if such an act were entirely natural. Grinning wickedly, he released a terrifying aura that exploded outward in a violent shockwave. Hunters were hurled like ragdolls, slamming into nearby buildings, while cars flipped through the air under the sheer force. With a savage grin, the man declared, "Listen up, you lowly humans. From this moment on, I'll be hunting you down. I'll rip apart your flimsy skin and flesh with my teeth and claws." His voice dripped with murderous intent, his sharp fangs glinting under the red glow. Finally, he revealed his identity, the king of beasts, the monarch of fangs. "Try and stop me, if you dare," he growled, as a crimson aura flared violently around him. The scene then shifted to a quiet forest, where Jinwoo and Hae-in rested. Hae-in knelt by a stream, cupping her hands to drink. Jinwoo, standing behind her, smiled and said, "There's a hotel nearby that serves an amazing breakfast. How about we wash up and eat there?" "That sounds good," Hae-in replied warmly. "Let's go," Jinwoo said, as Kaisel appeared beside them, ready to carry his master. Surprised, Hae-in tilted her head. "Didn't you say it was nearby? Why do we need Kaisel?" Jinwoo chuckled. "Even if I run at full speed, it will take 5 minutes." Her eyes widened at the implication. Just how many kilometers can he run in 5 minutes? She wondered. The two were flying toward the hotel atop Kaisel's back. Meanwhile, at the Korean Hunter Association, Chairman Jin Shul received alarming news. An intruder had appeared outside their headquarters. His colleague rushed in, reporting casualties, though the numbers were still unconfirmed. Shocked, Jin Shul pressed his forehead with his hand. There should still be days left before the dungeon break. Dealing with the gate was already a headache, and now this random beast appears. He immediately asked if they had contacted Sung Jinwoo, but his staff replied they couldn't reach him. Resolved, Jin Shul muttered that he would handle the matter himself. Suddenly, another agent rushed in. A hunter has stepped forward to face the beast. Jin Shul's eyes lit up. "Sung Jinwoo." "No," the agent replied, "but a world-class hunter has appeared on the scene." The hunter was none other than Germany's Leonard Nierman. Standing before the monarch of fangs, Leonard wondered if he was facing his death, or if fate had led him to Seoul to stop the monster with his own 2 hands. Just then, a deep voice came from behind him. "Move. You're in my way." It was Thomas Andre, the Goliath himself, brushing past Leonard with ease. The world's strongest hunter now stood face to face with the monarch of fangs. Elsewhere, at the hotel, Jinwoo and Hae-in were eating breakfast when Jin Shul's call finally connected. Jin Shul asked why he couldn't reach Jinwoo earlier. Jinwoo calmly explained that he had been outside the service area until now. "There's a beast running rampant in Seoul," Jin Shul reported urgently. Jinwoo replied, "That's impossible. The dungeon break isn't due for a few more days." But Jin Shul confirmed it. Even worse, the creature wasn't just any beast. It had wiped out an entire guild in the blink of an eye. And Thomas Andre himself was now fighting it. Jinwoo froze. That didn't make sense. He had stationed shadow soldiers to tail Thomas and the other hunters, with orders to report anything unusual immediately. Yet not a single message had reached him. Strangely, he now sensed his shadows and soul weakening, their signals flickering as though being interfered with. Then came the most alarming notice. His designated shadows could no longer be found at all. Something was wrong, gravely wrong. Hae-in asked if the dungeon break had already occurred, but Jinwoo shook his head. "No, it's something else. A powerful foe, a national-level hunter fighting it. And even my shadow's connection has been cut off." His eyes narrowed as a chilling realization dawned. "Check if the beast has a shadow," he instructed Jin Shul. "They may have hidden something colossal within an invisible shadow." Back at the association, the monarch of fangs stepped forward, his demonic grin spreading wide as a monstrous red aura burst from him. Behind him, a massive shadowy silhouette loomed like a nightmare-given form. Hunters gasped as Thomas Andre, the Goliath, lowered his sunglasses and locked eyes with the beast. "Looks like this wild animal doesn't know its place," he said coldly. "A mad beast should be vanquished. That's a universal truth." His golden aura flared like a blazing sun, colliding with the monarch's crimson power. The two clashed violently. The monarch slashed with his claws, but Thomas didn't flinch. Countering, he delivered a crushing punch to the monster's face, staggering it. The monarch retaliated with a fierce strike, yet Thomas stood unscathed. Seizing the moment, Thomas gripped the beast by the head and slammed it into the ground with devastating force. The impact shook the entire area, debris scattering like shrapnel. And with that, the chapter came to an earth-shattering close. The chapter opens with Hunter Choi Jong-in arriving on site, immediately asking about the progress of the evacuation. One of the hunters reports that they are still in the process of rescuing civilians trapped inside the nearby buildings. Jong-in then inquires which guilds are handling the situation. The hunter replies that the Fiend Guild and the White Tiger Guild have both been dispatched, adding that hunters from across the country have gathered because of the giant gate that appeared. Confidently, he assures Jong-in that the beast will be subdued in no time. Jong-in, however, can't hide his unease. He repeats the man's words in his mind. Subdued in no time? Clearly troubled. After all, even Thomas Andre, a national-level hunter, is currently engaged in battle with the mysterious beast. He comments on the colossal aura radiating through the area, noting that he has never felt such an overwhelming presence, not even during the Jeju Island raid. When he looks up, he sees a massive red aura emanating from the beast. Just what kind of monster is Thomas fighting? He wonders. The scene shifts to the intense confrontation between Thomas Andre and the Monarch of Fangs. The Monarch is sent crashing into a building after taking a devastating punch from Thomas, causing a violent explosion. A series of blasts soon follows from within the collapsing structure, catching Thomas off guard. The Monarch swiftly recovers and charges straight at him. The blow lands squarely in Thomas's abdomen, cracking the ground beneath him. But contrary to the Monarch's expectations, Thomas remains unmoved, unshaken. Before the Monarch can react, Thomas grabs him by the body, lifts him high, and slams his head into the ground, creating another earth-shaking explosion. Even with his head buried in the rubble, the Monarch manages to kick Thomas across the face, sending him flying. The Monarch grins wickedly as he rises again, staring at Thomas, who steadies himself mid-air with one hand. Yellow energy flares around Thomas's body as he growls. Reinforcement. Members of the White Tiger Guild, led by Baek Yoon-ho, finally arrive at the battlefield. Yoon-ho remarks that it looks like the real action is happening here and asks his team if they're ready. But before they can advance, a barrage of explosions shakes the area, startling him. Staring at the monstrous red aura, Yoon-ho realizes this must be the magic beast that was reported to have appeared. Then his eyes fall on the giant man facing the creature. That must be the world-renowned hunter, Goliath, Thomas Andre. Behind him, several hunters cheer for Thomas, shouting for him to kill the beast. Thomas, however, yells back at them. "You idiots, take cover, now." At that moment, the Monarch of Fangs turns toward them, his face dark and twisted with a monstrous grin. Yoon-ho instantly senses danger and transforms into his beast form. Yet as the Monarch's oppressive aura washes over him, fear grips his heart. For the first time, Baek Yoon-ho feels like prey, a tiger standing before a monstrous predator born from darkness. His instincts scream at him to flee. His transformation begins to fade, his body trembling. "I can't even look him in the eye," he realizes in terror. The Monarch raises his hand, gathering a violent red aura. Cars and debris lift off the ground and, with a single wave, are hurled toward Thomas. Unfazed, Thomas smashes or deflects them all. When a car comes flying at him, he catches it easily. Suddenly, yellow energy envelopes the Monarch, Thomas's power pulling him in. With a clenched fist, Thomas yanks the Monarch toward him and drives him into the ground with a thunderous impact, unleashing a flurry of blows that pound the Monarch relentlessly. But amid his furious strikes, Thomas feels something unsettling. His sense of victory slipping away, as though he's fighting a losing battle despite his strength. Charging another massive punch, Thomas lunges, only for the Monarch to catch his fist mid-swing. Thomas's arm trembles. The Monarch's hair slowly turns white, his form changing just like Yoon-ho's transformation. With a menacing smirk, the Monarch speaks. "I'm surprised that a mere puppet of a fragment can wield such strength. But I've had enough of your petty tricks." White hair now covers his face, and his fangs grow sharper. He has become even more beast-like. With one hand, he crushes Thomas's fist. "Are you afraid now?" he taunts. The Monarch's transformed presence overwhelms the area. Thomas, for all his power, suddenly feels small before him. Then comes a barrage of lightning-fast slashes, each one striking Thomas cleanly. "Do you feel fear? Or have you already lost hope?" The Monarch sneers. The onlooking hunters are stunned. The mighty national-level hunter, Thomas Andre, is being completely overpowered. Suddenly, the Monarch notices something. a faint shadow clinging to Thomas. "There's a little rat hiding inside," he mutters. The monarch grabs Thomas by the neck and pulls out the hidden figure, a shadow soldier. "What are you doing here, hiding in the shadows?" he says mockingly, before crushing the soldier in his grip. Thomas collapses to his knees, weakened by the attack. "Now then," the monarch says coldly, "let's pick up where we left off. Since you're so confident in your strength, let's make this a battle of brute force." He grips Thomas's helmeted face and crushes it, only to realize that the armor is empty. Behind him, Thomas has already reappeared, grabbing the monarch's head and twisting it violently until it snaps. The monarch's body freezes for a moment, eyes wide open, and then, horrifyingly, the head turns back to its original position, as if nothing happened. Before Thomas can react, the monarch seizes his face with one hand, lifts him off the ground, and slams his head into the earth. "Sorry," the monarch growls, "but I'm starting to feel hungry." Just as he's about to strike again, a powerful green burst of magic energy hits him square in the face, sending him reeling backward. Startled, the monarch looks up to see German hunter Leonard Neerman in the distance, his arms glowing with transparent green gauntlets. "I won't let you have your way," Leonard declares, standing defiantly as the chapter ends. The chapter opens with a dark silhouette standing amid the ruins, its body cloaked in a sinister dark red aura. It was the Monarch of Fangs, glaring down at Hunter Leonard Neerman after surviving the latter's attack. Just standing before the beast made Leonard's entire body tremble. The sheer pressure of its presence seeped into his bones, making him question his very existence. From the ground, Thomas Andre, battered and kneeling, shouted hoarsely, "Run away, Leonard. If you stay here, you'll die." Leonard glanced at him, his face firm with resolve. "I know," he answered, "but I'm a hunter too." In his mind, he repeated those words. Even if this was his final hour, he had no regrets. An honorable death is better than a cowardly survival, he thought. He believed he had made the right choice. Over and over again, he told himself that. But as the Monarch of Fangs strode toward him, its dark aura surging like a storm, doubt began to creep into his heart. The closer it came, the heavier the air grew. He swallowed hard. Was this the wrong choice? Just as the monarch lunged, fangs bared to tear him apart. A shadow erupted from above, a massive wyvern cloaked in darkness, roaring as it collided with the monarch and dragged it away from the German hunter. It was Kaisel, the shadow wyvern of Storm-Jinwoo. Leonard froze in disbelief as the two monsters clashed in midair. The monarch slashed wildly with its claws, cutting through Kaisel's shadowy body. With a final strike, the wyvern exploded in a storm of black mist and smoke. The monarch grinned, until the dust began to settle. A shadowed figure emerged from the haze in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Storm-Jinwoo appeared, his foot snapping up in a powerful kick that connected cleanly with the monarch's skull, slamming it into the ground and shattering the earth with a thunderous explosion. As Jinwoo landed, Leonard stared in awe. "Please," Jinwoo said firmly, "I's never leaving the fallen monarch. Take Thomas somewhere safe." Without hesitation, Leonard obeyed, helping the wounded Thomas retreat. The Monarch of Fangs rose from the crater, fury twisting his monstrous features. "So it's true," he snarled. "A human carries the scent of that shadow bastard." His rage boiled over. The beast's face fully transformed into that of a feral wolf, red eyes glowing, energy crackling violently across his fangs. From afar, Leonard turned back once more, assuring Jinwoo, "Don't worry about us." Jinwoo's gaze hardened as he faced the beast. He could feel the monarch's bloodlust burning like fire. And worse, he could sense that the creature was not alone. The monarch growled, "How can a mere human body generate the power of a supreme being to this extent?" Shadows shifted around him. One by one, other figures began to emerge, the other monarchs. A voice echoed behind him. "Perhaps the architect found a way," said one. "It's been a long time since the Shadow Monarch made his deal with him." From the ground behind Jinwoo, another being surfaced, its body dark and skeletal. It grinned, asking in a chilling tone, "Mind if I eat the human's corpse? I want to know what another monarch tastes like." Moments later, a shadowy woman rose from the earth, her cloak swirling like smoke with a sickly greenish glow. Mist and debris circled her feet as pairs of luminous eyes flickered within her darkness. Her presence radiated poison and death. Jinwoo stood firm, purple energy coursing from his body as the air trembled under the combined power of his foes. One after another, his system registered their names. Sillad, the king of snowfolk, monarch of frost. Rakan, the king of beasts, monarch of fangs. Querehsha, the queen of insects, monarch of plagues. In an instant, Jinwoo found himself surrounded. Their combined auras surged, rising into the sky like a storm of chaos. The pressure alone shattered nearby buildings, and the entire city quaked as if on the verge of collapse. Jinwoo raised his hand, his voice cold and commanding. "Come forth." From the shadows, his army erupted into existence. Igris and Iron charged towards Sillad, while Jima and Tank rushed Rakan. Baru and Greed leapt toward Querehsha, their weapons drawn and ready. Rakan smirked. "So this is your new shadow army, huh?" Sillad inhaled deeply, frost gathering at his lips. Jinwoo's eyes widened. With a roar, Sillad exhaled a blizzard, an icy storm so absolute that it froze the very air itself. The breath rolled across the battlefield like a silver hurricane, crystallizing everything in its path. Jinwoo's shadows were engulfed, frozen mid-charge in solid ice. Even Jinwoo felt the numbing chill crawl toward him, but he blocked it just in time, crossing his twin daggers before him. Sillad's cold voice echoed through the frozen field. "They may be many, but they're nothing more than a disorderly mob. These soldiers of yours, Shadow Monarch, can't move even a single inch inside my frost prison." The battlefield had become a frozen wasteland, glittering under the pale light of destruction. Querehsha smiled, tilting her head towards Sillad. "Tell me, did you freeze my children too?" she purred. "I was just about to have a reunion with them." She tapped lightly on one of the ice blocks. Sillad's expression hardened. "I can't believe you thought you could stop us with mere shadows. How absurd." He looked at Jinwoo, his cold tone laced with mockery. "You shouldn't underestimate us. Perhaps you haven't even fully absorbed the power of the Shadow Monarch yet. He may have been the greatest among us, but you are far from his level." Jinwoo glanced down at his frozen dagger. Then, slowly, he tightened his grip and crushed the ice effortlessly. A dark, fierce light burned in his eyes as he spun the dagger and pointed it directly at Sillad. "You," Jinwoo said coldly. "No matter what happens, you're going down." The chapter begins with Jinwoo warning Sillad that no matter what happens, he is going down. Sillad becomes enraged by Jinwoo's words and calls him an insolent fool as countless giant ice monsters appear behind him. Querehsha also speaks, saying, "Hey, let me in on the fun too," as corpses begin crawling out from the ground, clearly generated by her, and it becomes noticeable that parasites infest these bodies. The corpses leap toward Jinwoo, but he swiftly slashes them the moment they approach. He realizes in his thoughts that Querehsha is using corpses to fight. Suddenly, a massive hand of giant ice monsters appears in front of him. Jinwoo narrowly dodges, the attack smashing into the ground, and then he dashes toward the monster's head, unleashing a swift slash that instantly kills it. As soon as he lands, two more ice monsters rush toward him. Jinwoo notices them, his eyes glowing a terrifying purple as he releases a barrage of rapid upward slashes, slicing the monsters into pieces. Afterward, he charges towards Sillad, rage burning in his eyes, something that clearly shocks and alarms Sillad. But before Jinwoo reaches him, Rakan interrupts, launching a claw strike that Jinwoo barely avoids. A flurry of fast exchanges follows, Rakan with his claws, Jinwoo with his daggers. Rakan arrogantly mocks him, asking if he really thinks he can hurt him with that little iron stick, referring to the dagger. Within an instant, Rakan screams in pain as Jinwoo cuts off his hand. Jinwoo responds, "Not if this were just an ordinary iron stick." Before Jinwoo can continue, he suddenly senses a massive green-colored hand flying toward him. He barely dodges it as it smashes into the ground, creating a powerful shockwave. Above, multiple floating green hands, Querehsha's attacks, fill the air. Meanwhile, Rakan raises his arm and regenerates it as if nothing happened. Jinwoo sighs when he realizes that all three monarchs are now teaming up against him, their attacks overlapping. Suddenly, The ice encasing Beru begins to crack and bursts apart. Beru dashes toward Jinwoo, yelling, "My liege," and roaring in fury at the monarchs who dared to harm his king. Sillad is stunned that a mere shadow could break free from his binding spell. He questions how a human could produce a commander-level entity. Rakan adds that every commander-level soldier of the Shadow Monarch is essentially a god of destruction. Querehsha comments coldly that any child who fails to recognize their own mother must be punished, referring to Beru. A massive green hand flies toward Beru, but Beru cuts it down effortlessly and snaps back. "You crazy wench," enraging Querehsha. Beru immediately kneels before Jinwoo, crying as he declares that Jinwoo truly stands second to none for holding his ground against transcendent beings. He calls himself a humble servant in constant awe of his king's greatness. As Beru speaks, Jinwoo notices corpses lunging at them again. He and Beru react instantly, unleashing rapid slashes that shred the corpses in an instant. Unfortunately, Querehsha's giant hands strike again, hitting them both, before Jinwoo can react and hurling him into a nearby building. Jinwoo forces himself up, only to see countless ice spikes flying toward him. He deflects them with his dagger. High above, standing on a massive block of ice, Sillad taunts him, asking how much longer he can endure their combined attacks. Ice spikes continue pouring down on him. In an instant, Jinwoo's dagger flies through the air and pierces Sillad's chest, so fast that Sillad barely registers it. Jinwoo replies, "I told you already. You're not going to make it out of here alive," gripping his twin daggers as he stares at Sillad. Furious, Sillad demands how Jinwoo dares to say such a thing to a monarch while clutching the dagger embedded in his chest. Jinwoo realizes he stabbed him in the heart, but it still wasn't enough for a fatal blow. So he prepares to charge again, but a red aura intercepts him, and when Sillad notices who it is, he smirks. It is Rakan, who appears behind Jinwoo in an instant. Rakan forms a massive sword and slashes Jinwoo from behind with a powerful strike, causing a deep wound that forces Jinwoo to cough blood. Beru screams, "My king," in panic, not noticing Querehsha behind him. She introduces herself as Querehsha, monarch of plagues and mother of all insects residing in the world of chaos. She grabs Beru with a massive hand, claiming she will embrace him as her child even if he fails to recognize her. Jinwoo can no longer stand, and beside him stands Rakan holding his giant sword, declaring, "This is the end." Meanwhile, Beru, trapped in Querehsha's grasp, screams at the frozen shadow soldiers, "You stupid peasants! What are you doing? Hurry and help our king." A red glow appears inside the ice. Greed awakens, declaring he will kill all the enemies. The ice surrounding him shatters. Rakan comments that Greed must have been a powerful warrior in his lifetime. Sillad notices other high-ranking shadows beginning to awaken. Iron, Igris, and Tusk shatter their ice as well. The monarchs remain unfazed, confident that Jinwoo is finished due to his grievous wound. But Jinwoo simply smiles and says, "Oh, this?" Rakan and Sillad are shocked as Jinwoo utters the command, "Status recovery." A green aura envelopes him, and his wounds begin to heal. News of the massive battle in Seoul had already spread across the globe. The scene was televised in New York, London, Shanghai, even Paris. Above Seoul, a dark purple sky loomed ominously, while below, waves of destructive energy erupted from the clash between Jinwoo and the monarchs. German hunter Leonard watched in terror. It looks like a storm is raging, and Sung Jinwoo is at the center of it. Nearby, Thomas Andre, still being treated by healer-class hunters, demanded to know what was happening. Leonard could only answer, "It feels like we're witnessing the end of the world." Hunter Yunho, watching from a distance, stared in disbelief and asked himself whether the Sung Jinwoo he was witnessing was still the one he used to know. He had always known Jinwoo could grow stronger, but he wondered just how much had he grown in such a short amount of time. The focus returned to the battlefield. Rakan now faced two of Jinwoo's shadow commanders, Igris and Iron. With one hand holding his massive sword, Rakan blocked Igris's strike, while his other hand casually stopped Iron's powerful swing. Not far away, Tusk and Greed confronted Sillad. Greed launched a heavy punch, only for Sillad to block it with an ice shield. Tusk's fire magic erupted toward him, but Sillad countered with a freezing ice blizzard. Beru, still trapped in Querehsha's grasp, sliced off the Monarch of Plague's fingers, startling her. Enraged, Querehsha refused to let him escape and began unleashing another attack. "You bastard," she hissed. A voice echoed behind her. "The architect prophesied that a pillar of fire holding up the world would kill me," Jinwoo said calmly. But what he didn't tell me was whether that pillar would fall. Twin massive slashes carved across Querehsha's face. Far from the main fight, Hunter Lim Taegyu waited for the perfect moment to take his shot. But the longer he observed, the more he felt he shouldn't interfere at all. 30 minutes earlier, elite assassins from the Fiend Guild had been deployed to strategic positions. When they received the signal, they would barrage the target with supporting fire, hoping to deliver a lethal blow. But Taegyu couldn't shake the question. How many of them would survive? If the attack failed, they would die. If it succeeded, they would also die. Not even Thomas Andre could handle that monster. They needed to decide quickly. Suddenly, someone placed a hand on his shoulder, a tall man with long hair. "Just watch," the man whispered. Taegyu spun around, alert, but the man had vanished. Elsewhere, the other hunters who had come to evacuate civilians watched helplessly. None of them were able to join the battle. All they could do was wait for the storm to end. And it seemed the end was close. Back on the battlefield, the wounds Jinwoo inflicted on Querehsha were evident, but Querehsha countered by releasing a massive poison aura. Jinwoo didn't even move. "This is poison?" he asked calmly. His system displayed deadly poison, effects present in the atmosphere. But it had no effect on him. A green aura enveloped Jinwoo. Detoxification has been activated. He was fully healed, then declared that poison don't work on him. Querehsha trembled with rage. "You arrogant bastard," she screamed, lunging at Jinwoo from behind. "I'll rip you to shreds." But she never finished the threat. Her body froze in place, unable to move. An overwhelming purple aura surged from Jinwoo's hand, too strong for her to break free from. Jinwoo activated mutilation. He leapt forward and unleashed a storm of relentless slashes. As she faded, Querehsha smiled faintly. "So this is death. A darkness so heavy that even beings born from darkness stand in awe. What a brilliant darkness this is." Her body dissolved completely. A system notification appeared. "You have defeated one of the 9 monarchs. Querehsha, Monarch of Plagues." Jinwoo leveled up 3 times. Sillad could hardly believe what he had witnessed. Jinwoo didn't even have full control of the Shadow Monarch's power, yet he managed to kill a monarch. Sillad worried if they were about to experience the terror of facing the most powerful king of chaos once again. Rakan scoffed. "There's nothing to fear. He's exhausted, and the fact that he relies on his shadows proves he's incomplete. An incomplete monarch cannot defeat us, the true monarchs." Rakan tightened his grip around Beru's neck. The shadow commander no longer moved, and Sillad's ice continued to freeze the other shadows solid. Jinwoo could sense Beru's presence fading. Alarmed, he attempted to unsummon him, but the system displayed. "The specified target cannot be recalled." Jinwoo dashed forward instantly and struck Rakan away from Beru, managing to prevent Beru's destruction. Suddenly Sillad's form began to change. "It seems you were right, Rakan," he said. "I overestimated this human's power." A massive explosion erupted as enormous ice spikes burst from the ground. A freezing aura radiated from Sillad as he held a gleaming trident. "Even if you control your puppets with mana," he warned Jinwoo, "everything ends once the strings are cut." His transformation completed, his appearance now more elf-like, his hair turning pure white. "I'll ensnare your puppets every time they rise. Make them recover and resurrect endlessly. They'll become nothing but parasites draining your mana." Sillad slashed, and Jinwoo blocked with his daggers. But the trident's tip grazed his shoulder, drawing blood. Sillad swung again, smashing Jinwoo into the ground with a massive explosion. When the smoke cleared, Jinwoo was gone. He reappeared beside Sillad, striking swiftly with his dagger. Sillad barely dodged by leaning away. He countered, thrusting his trident into Jinwoo's stomach, sending him flying. Jinwoo planted his foot into the ground to stop his momentum. Breathing heavily, Jinwoo realized just how fast Sillad was. Sillad commented, "It seems your spiritual body manifestation consumes a great deal of mana. I'll end this quickly." He dashed forward before Jinwoo could fully recover. Jinwoo deflected every rapid strike with his dagger. Their weapons clashed again and again. Then Jinwoo noticed something. Sillad's movements, his breathing, his muscles, even his mana flow. He could see everything. Jinwoo thought that if he could just outpace him a little bit. Sillad scoffed. Whatever you're planning, it's useless. A second weapon, a scythe, materialized in Sillad's free hand. With trident and scythe, he unleashed a sweeping attack that caused ice spikes to erupt from the ground. Jinwoo seized the opening and appeared behind him, shocking Sillad. "I got you," Jinwoo declared. But before he could strike, a sharp pain tore through his back. Every hunter watching froze in horror. Rakan had stabbed Jinwoo from behind, his claws bursting through Jinwoo's body, while Sillad froze Jinwoo's legs, preventing him from escaping. "You pride yourself on your agility," Rakan whispered mockingly. "But I guess you're nothing without it." Jinwoo coughed blood, unable to move. The chapter ended with Jinwoo's system notification popping up, displaying his current stats as he hovered on the brink of collapse. The chapter opened with Jinwoo's daggers slipping from his hands and clattering onto the cold ground. Rakan's massive claw was buried deep into his chest, making his entire body tremble uncontrollably. In his mind, Jinwoo told himself that he had already leveled up. This fight should have been easy. Then, without warning, Sillad drove a dagger, Jinwoo's own blade, now encased in ice, straight into his chest. The weapon was the same dagger Jinwoo had thrown earlier, the one that had lodged into Sillad's body. Sillad smirked. "Let's see if you can heal the way you did earlier." Blood spilled from Jinwoo's mouth as Sillad twisted the weapon deeper. "No matter how strong you are, you're still nothing but an incomplete monarch," Sillad added with icy disdain. He leaned forward. "Is this your limit? It seems you won't live long enough to witness the day our army descends upon this world. When that day comes, we will erect mountains with your corpses and forge rivers from your blood." Those who witnessed the scene could only watch in horror. Sillad continued speaking, his voice filled with cruelty. "The day our army sets foot in this world, on that day, we will build mountains from corpses and rivers from your blood. But the country where you were born, I have a different plan for that place. I will freeze every single human within it, trapping them between life and death for all eternity. They will suffer forever, never living, never dying. So go on, show me your hatred even as you fall into death. Even that will entertain me." Jinwoo's face gradually turned pale blue as ice crept over his skin. In his fading consciousness, one thought echoed faintly. Just a little more. Everything suddenly went dark. Notifications appeared before him. The player's HP has reached 0. The player has died. The player possesses the Black Heart. The player has met all requirements for passive skill. Unknown. Passive skill. Unknown has been activated. A blinding light burst forth, enveloping Jinwoo's body. The next moment, he opened his eyes, lying in the hospital where everything had first begun. Gasping, he clutched his chest, his breath sharp and frantic. The last thing he remembered was being killed by the Monarchs. Was it all just a dream? He looked around and realized he was indeed inside a hospital room. He was stabbed with an ice dagger, yet he was still alive. The door opened, and Jinchul entered with another agent. "Have you come to your senses?" Jinchul asked. Jinwoo stared at him, confused. "Chairman Wu?" He immediately followed with frantic questions. "What happened to the Monarchs? And how am I still alive?" Jinchul blinked, bewildered. "There's something I need to clarify. First, I'm the manager of the surveillance team. I'm not the chairman. Second, I came here to ask about the moving statues. And third, how do you know who I am? Have we met before?" Jinwoo stiffened. "The moving statues?" Jinchul nodded. "After receiving the survivor's report, we sent the White Tiger Guild and several surveillance agents to investigate." "That's not what I meant," Jinwoo muttered in disbelief. Nothing made sense. And as he looked around, he finally understood why the room seemed familiar. It was the very same room where he had awakened after surviving the double dungeon. He had been hospitalized for 2 weeks back then. Jinchul studied him. "You look different from your photo. Are you sure you're feeling all right?" Jinwoo then said, "I need some time to gather my thoughts." His mind raced. What is happening? He opened his system status. The numbers were unchanged. Every point he had gained since his reawakening was still there. All his items remained in his inventory, including Kamish's wrath. The door burst open again. A young woman entered, scolding him. What do you think you're doing? You just woke up. It was Gina, his sister, but she froze the moment she saw him. Are we in the wrong room? Who are you? Only then did Jinwoo realize that the changes in his appearance had happened gradually, slow enough that those around him had gotten used to it. But here, he had returned abruptly to his old timeline. To Gina, he now looked like a stranger. Song-yi peeked from behind Gina. Gina, how can you not recognize your own brother? Gina squinted, still unconvinced. Are you really my brother? Something about you looks different, especially your height. Jinwoo sighed. You're just imagining things. He left the room soon after. Gina hurried after him, asking why he was leaving. I'm going to the Hunter Association, he replied. Why? She asked. To quit being a hunter. Gina froze in shock. Jinwoo added gently, I know you're in the middle of class. Go back to school. Then he turned to Song-yi. That goes for you too. Don't even think about becoming a hunter. Don't drop out of school. Song-yi stared, stunned that he somehow knew her name. As Jinwoo left, he thought to himself, even if my soldiers are gone, I can rebuild my army. But the biggest question still troubled him. How did I travel back to the past? Jinwoo soon arrived at the Hunter Association. Workers stared in disbelief. To them, the unkempt young man before them was supposedly an S-rank candidate. It had been 2 years since Hae-in, the last S-rank, had appeared. One staff member explained nervously, Sir, the device can't measure your mana level. Jinwoo cut him off. I know. I just want to meet the chairman before my reassessment. Is that all right? The man blinked rapidly. Ah, yes. I can escort you. No need, Jinwoo said calmly. I know where his office is. As Jinwoo walks away, the man thinks to himself, how does he know? He doesn't work here. Inside the elevator, Jinwoo found himself standing beside Hunter Kong Tae-shik. Tae-shik was deep in thought, trying to invent another excuse to avoid suspicion. Thinking if he got on Jinchuel's bad side, he was doomed. Jinwoo suddenly spoke. You haven't reported your camouflage skill to the association yet. Tae-shik's eyes widened. And you're not on the watch list, Jinwoo continued. Even though you're ranked high enough to be. Soon, someone will ask you to avenge their daughter. I don't care what you do to criminals. But if you harm innocent hunters. Jinwoo's eyes glowed with a terrifying aura. I'll kill you with my own hands. Only then did Tae-shik realize that Jinwoo was holding his daggers. He hadn't even noticed when they were taken. This is your only warning, Jinwoo said before stepping out. Tae-shik stood frozen. Who is he? He feels like a ghost. Inside the chairman's office, Jinwoo bowed politely. Nice to meet you, Chairman. Jinwoo suddenly feels like ages since they last spoke. Chairman Go smiled. If you came straight here after your test results, then you already know the procedure. He paused upon seeing Jinwoo's solemn expression. Is something wrong? No, nothing, Jinwoo replied. A system message flickered. Would you like to restart the world? Jinwoo ignored it. I want to make a proposal, he said. Please change the regulations so that summoned creatures can officially participate in raids. If you do that, I'll take care of the ants on Jeju Island. Jinwoo thought that he needed to go to Jeju to rebuild his army. Another notification flashed. Would you like to restart the world? Chairman Go stared at him, stunned. That's ridiculous. Do you have any idea how many raids have failed on Jeju Island? But his words trailed off when he felt it. The overwhelming dark energy pouring out of Jinwoo. Please leave it to me, Jinwoo said firmly. I can exterminate the ants. Chairman Go shivered. This power, it surpassed even a national-level hunter. How is it possible? Soon, Jinwoo moved on to replenish his shadow army. It wasn't a memory. He was living through it once more. The cycle had begun again, dragging him back to the point where everything had started. He stood in the dungeon, the place where he had taken down Dong Suk and his teammates. Then came Kong Tae-shik, the man who had tried to kill him and the other hunters, in which after that makes Jo-hee to retire. Throughout it all, the constant notifications urging him to reset the world flashed before his eyes, a persistent reminder of the strange situation he was trapped in. The cycle pressed forward. Jinwoo found himself once again within the Red Gate, fighting and eventually gaining Tank as his shadow soldier. Next came the Hunters Guild Gate, where the shaman fell before him and Tusk was added to his steadily growing shadow army. Yet the notifications continued, relentless, endless, forcing him to endure the repetition again and again. He relived his battles in the Demon Castle, once more securing the holy water of life that would awaken his mother from her eternal slumber. And then, the battlefield of Jeju Island stretched out before him. The remains of ant-type magic beasts littered the land. At his feet lay the lifeless body of the Ant King. Jinwoo did not hesitate. He raised his hand, commanding the dead to rise. Shadows surged forth from the fallen ants, including Beru, who had once ruled over them as their king. But still, the notifications persisted, unyielding, insistent, asking him over and over whether he wished to reset the world. Finally, Jinwoo exhaled sharply. "All right, that's enough. Cut it out." He shouted into the void. "I know this is all an illusion, so stop hiding. Show yourself. How long are you planning to watch from up there?" The battlefield dissolved. Darkness swallowed everything. Jinwoo stood alone as countless notifications urging him to reset the world surrounded him. Then, from the shadows beside him, a figure emerged. A towering being clad in black armor, wrapped in swirling violet energy. Jinwoo narrowed his eyes. "Are you the king of the dead?" The chapter opens in a dark, purple-lit space where a shadowy figure looms. Its cracked, armor-like silhouette is outlined by crackling violet energy. Sung Jinwoo looks at the being and asks if it is the king of the dead. The figure answers calmly, telling Jinwoo that he could live in this world forever if he wished, like never waking from a happy dream. Jinwoo responds by asking if the being's intention is to trap him inside an illusion he created. The figure denies this and explains that it is not the creator of this world. Instead, it reveals the truth. Jinwoo himself is. Shocked, Jinwoo asks what the figure means. The being begins to speak through the images of Jinwoo's family and friends, its voice echoing with authority. It explains that Jinwoo's desire to correct his past mistakes, combined with its power, is what created this world. This place is its domain, an eternal slumber known as death. The being reveals that it has been watching Jinwoo for a very long time, far longer than Jinwoo could imagine. Even when Jinwoo stood closer to death than anyone else, he resisted it with everything he had. The figure declares itself the record of Jinwoo's struggles, the proof of his resistance, and the reward for his suffering. It is death, eternal rest, and terror itself. Finally, the figure speaks the truth. "I am you." An image of Jinwoo's former self appears. A small sprout grows among dense vegetation, symbolizing rebirth. The being explains that within its domain, Jinwoo is free to do anything he wishes. He can claim any part of the domain as his own and absorb its power. The scene shifts as the figure continues speaking. Jinwoo now sees Hae-in standing in a beautiful garden filled with white lilies and lush green plants beneath a bright, dreamlike sky. Speaking through her, the being explains that although this power exists only within Jinwoo's domain, he possesses the ability to create, destroy, and reshape the world itself, an omnipotent power. Jinwoo asks if this means they share the same power. The figure replies that it has waited a very long time to meet him. The garden fades away, returning to the shadowy figure, which finally introduces itself as the Monarch of Shadows, the king who rules over death and governs the deepest darkness. Jinwoo asks why he was chosen. The Monarch answers that it will show him why. Raising its hand, purple energy gathers as it declares that it will reveal their beginning and their end, along with Jinwoo's true beginning. The scene abruptly shifts back to reality. Jinwoo's body is completely frozen by Sillad's power. Rakan sniffs him and confirms that Jinwoo has stopped breathing. Thomas Andre senses Jinwoo's presence vanish and turns to Hunter Leonard, asking what happened. Leonard can only respond with uncertainty. Yunho mutters that it is impossible, realizing that without Jinwoo, no one can stop the beasts. High above on a building, Hunter Taegu prepares to release his arrow. He curses himself for listening to the stranger who approached him earlier, but believes it may not be too late. Even though national-level hunters have failed, there is no turning back. He orders his team to prepare to fire on his signal. Suddenly, a powerful heartbeat echoes through the battlefield. Sillad freezes, alarmed. The heartbeat grows louder and faster, and dark purple energy begins pouring from Jinwoo's body. Sillad realizes the sound is coming from Jinwoo's chest, from a black heart on the left side. Both monarchs stood stunned. They declared that they could not allow the true king to descend after the false one had fallen. United by desperation, they resolved to stop it, no matter the cost. They leap forward to attack Jinwoo's body. Without warning, a devastating kick slams into Rakan's face, sending him flying into Sillad. Both crash into a building, which collapses from the impact. A man stands before them. He drew 2 daggers and declared that from this moment on, no one was permitted to lay a finger on the child, referring to Jinwoo. Standing battle-ready, his long hair flowed freely as he gripped the blades tightly in both hands. A powerful golden aura erupted from his body, flooding the surroundings with overwhelming pressure. The scene returns to Jinwoo and the Monarch of Shadows. The Monarch declares, "I will show you our beginning and our end, as well as your beginning." The vision shifts to another world, one where only light and darkness existed, at a time when nothing else had yet been born. The Absolute Being divided the light, creating the messengers of God, and split the darkness, giving rise to the 8 monarchs. The monarchs were born to destroy the world, while the messengers were created to preserve it. Their armies clashed endlessly, slaughtering one another without end. Exhausted by the never-ending war, the greatest fragment of brilliant light questioned the Absolute Being, asking why it refused to aid its faithful servants, and whether it could not hear the screams of countless soldiers dying in its name. The fragment begged for strength to eradicate their enemies, but the Absolute Being did not respond. That was when the fragments of brilliant light realized the truth. Their battle against the monarchs was nothing more than a source of entertainment for the Absolute Being. The Absolute Being had no desire for the war to ever end. Everyone worshipped the Absolute Being. Everyone bellowed battle cries for the Absolute Being. Everyone swore allegiance to the Absolute Being with their blood and life. They all continued to abide by the commandments until the very end. Yet the number of lives lost far surpassed those who ever overcame death. Death awaited even those who followed the laws faithfully. The war would never end as long as the Absolute Being existed. Realizing this, the fragments of brilliant light drew their swords to put an end to the meaningless conflict. The Monarch of Shadows explained that this act became known as a rebellion. Jinwoo was stunned by what he heard. The Monarch of Shadows raised a finger and pointed toward one of the fragments of brilliant light. That was my former self. He was the only messenger of God who did not join the rebels. However, his army was pitiful in comparison, no match for the combined forces of the allied rebel messengers. Believing that his end had come, he closed his eyes, prepared for death. But when he opened them again, he found himself surrounded by darkness. It was then that he realized the Absolute Being had hidden immense power within him. Dark purple energy began to surge from his body. With a single command, "Arise." The fallen soldiers rose one by one, summoned from death to become his new army. The spears impaling his body were torn free as overwhelming dark energy enveloped him completely. He led his resurrected army back into battle. However, when he finally returned to the place where the Absolute Being resided, he realized that everything was already over. Before him lay the lifeless corpse of the Absolute Being, its body pierced by countless swords and spears. The vision reveals that the fragments of brilliant light had slain the Absolute Being. After seizing its position, they assumed the role of gods and came to be known as the rulers. Using devices infused with the Absolute Being's power, the rulers launched a full-scale assault on the monarchs. As a result, Legia, the king of giants and monarch of the beginning, was captured. With that, the balance of power collapsed. The Monarch of Shadows explains that this was when the monarchs finally grasped the gravity of the situation. Seizing the opportunity, he reached out to them. To stand against the rulers, they had no choice but to join forces with him. From that moment on, he fought a long and brutal war alongside the 9 monarchs. Not as a fragment of brilliant light, not as a messenger of God, but as the Monarch of Shadows. Time itself stood on his side. The corpses and souls left behind on the battlefield became his army. When he finally stood shoulder to shoulder with the army of destruction, led by the king of berserk dragons, both the rulers and the monarchs began to fear him. Eventually, 2 monarchs joined hands to bring him down. His army was nearly annihilated, and his overwhelming power became the very cause of betrayal. While the Monarch of Fangs fled with his forces, Baron, the Monarch of White Flames and King of Demons, paid the price. Then, the sky shattered. the rulers descended from above. At the same time, the Monarch of Shadows concealed Baron within his own shadow. One by one, the rulers landed around him and knelt. They begged for forgiveness, calling him the greatest fragment of brilliant light, claiming there was no longer any reason for them to fight. In his mind, he knew that although the rulers were capable of casting him back into nothingness, they chose peace instead. It was their way of showing respect to a fellow fragment born of the same origin, one who had once led the army of brilliant light on the front lines. He answered coldly, asking whether there was truly no reason to fight when their swords and spears had struck down his master. A ruler replied that the absolute being had been their master as well. The Monarch of Shadows erupted in rage, grabbing one of the rulers by the face. Then that only makes your crimes all the more unforgivable. The ruler answered calmly, saying that he understood better than anyone what they had felt when they rose in rebellion. All they wanted was to end the war. The Monarch of Shadows responded fiercely, "Then pierce my heart with your spears. If that is the end you seek, then emerge as the victors of this war." The ruler pleaded with him to search his heart for forgiveness. "Hurry up and kill me then," the monarch roared. The ruler begged him to let go of his anger, once again calling him the greatest fragment of brilliant light. The rulers placed their hands over their chests, surrounding him in silence. The monarch continues his tale through the familiar faces of those Jinwoo knew. Confused and unable to find a solution, he chose to disappear, planning his revenge in secret. Having confined the Monarch of White Flames within his shadow, his plan was to allow his body to recover before launching an assault on the Monarch of Fang's army. However, while he remained in hiding, the weakened monarchs were defeated one by the rulers. When he finally reappeared before the monarchs who had escaped into the gap between dimensions, the Dragon King realized it was time to restore their strength. He prevented them from fighting among themselves and accepted the Monarch of Shadows' return. Together, they searched for a world beyond the ruler's sight, a place where they could build a new army. Jinwoo realizes the truth and asks, "Earth?" The monarch confirms it. The monarch's arrival must have been unprecedented for mankind, and humanity's annihilation was inevitable. The vision shifts to a city engulfed in flames. Jinwoo recognizes it immediately, the demon castle. He asks if this is the future. The monarch replies that it is not, it is the past. He explains that while the monarchs exist to destroy, the rulers exist to preserve the world after the absolute being's death. The rulers tracked down the monarchs and sent their soldiers after them. But by then, everything had already ended. Enraged that the denizens of chaos they failed to stop had destroyed yet another world, the rulers used a forbidden artifact containing the absolute being's power. The Cup of Reincarnation, an instrument of God capable of turning back time by approximately 10 years. The rulers did everything they could to save the world, but Earth was far too weak. A world without mana could not withstand such titanic battles. It would not have mattered who won. Earth would have been destroyed regardless. Unable to save everyone, the rulers chose instead to preserve a portion of humanity, so that life might continue. Jinwoo asks if that is how hunters were born. The monarch confirms it. They created beings capable of surviving the collision of the two great forces. That was how desperately the rulers wished to protect mankind. Jinwoo reflects on the phrase, beings who can survive a changed world. If everyone except a handful of hunters was doomed, could society truly function? The demon castle, the monarch explains, was a memory fragment he left behind. Jinwoo asks if the world has already been destroyed countless times. Yes, the monarch answers. Although higher beings cannot interfere with time itself, they can perceive the effects of the Cup of Reincarnation. While the rulers attempted to make amends repeatedly, the monarchs refined their plans, until the divine artifact was rendered useless. Jinwoo asks if the cup has limits. "There is no such thing as infinite power," the monarch replies. Even the absolute being was defeated by its own creations. Jinwoo wonders how a creator could be killed by what it made. The monarch compares it to humans being harmed by the machines they create. They were born to fight, and possessed power sufficient to overthrow their maker. The monarchs took inspiration from this. Just as the rulers empowered humans by spreading mana through the slaughter of magic beasts, the monarchs borrowed human bodies to descend upon Earth, arriving far sooner than the rulers expected. Their plan was to use the mana scattered by the rulers to turn Earth into a massive trap, slaughtering the ruler's army in a single blow. However, a monarch requires an extraordinarily strong vessel to descend into the human world. That was why both the Monarch of Destruction and him failed to find a suitable host. Then, a skilled mage, later known as the Architect, approached him with a proposal. In exchange for immortality, he would find a vessel capable of housing death itself. Since no living being could naturally serve as such a vessel, the Architect created the system, designed to search for a human highly responsive to mana, possessing both physical resilience and mental fortitude. The process was difficult. Then he noticed a human who had exceeded the system's expectations, a man who defied its rules. Though weak and constantly at death's door, he always survived. "I watched you," the Monarch tells Jinwoo. "Despite the Architect's objections, you are the record of my struggles, the proof of my resistance, the reward for my pain." Jinwoo recalls images of his family. He admits that while he broke free from the Architect's scheme, he doubts he was ever strong enough to inherit such power. The Monarch explains that the system allowed Jinwoo to gradually adapt, using humanity's love for games and progression. The system reshaped his body step by step. Jinwoo realized that this was why it resembled a video game, and why he was called a player. Jinwoo asks why the Monarch betrayed the Architect. The Monarch answers that between the ruler's apology and the Monarch's betrayal, he delayed choosing a side for too long and made a decision of his own. "Spending time with you brought me happiness. Perhaps I did not wish to lose you. I became you, and you became me. We are already one." The Monarch offers Jinwoo a choice: remain in the domain of death, resting in eternal peace within beautiful dreams, or return to reality and face his enemies. Jinwoo answered calmly, telling the Monarch that he had already made his decision. Not only had the Monarch chosen not to stand with the rulers, but he had also lost the will to fight them altogether. Jinwoo then asked why. In that case, the Monarch had fled to another world alongside the other monarchs. The Monarch replied simply, "Because there was no place for me there." Jinwoo smiled faintly. "My answer is the same," he said. "I don't belong here." In his final moments, the Monarch of Shadows grinned through the image of Chairman Go. Jinwoo asked if this would be the last time he would see him. The Monarch answered that he would now return to his eternal rest. Jinwoo, however, as the new Monarch of Shadows, would live on as an immortal. Because of that, he doubted their paths would ever cross again. He added that with death, his power had become absolute. "I know," Jinwoo replied with a quiet smile. At last, the Monarch returned to his true form. As he gazed at Jinwoo, he spoke his final words: "Because I am you." The two faced one another amid a fiery, sunset-lit landscape. Jinwoo closed his eyes, standing before the radiant light. A single word echoed through the world: "Arise." The chapter began with notifications appearing across Jinwoo's system. The code to delete the player's training system has been entered. The system will now be deleted. Alongside this, a message confirmed that all commander-level Shadow soldiers empowered by the Monarch would regain their full abilities. One by one, the Shadows returned: Igris, Beru, and others. Another notification appeared. The Monarch of Shadows, Ashborn, has returned to the world of eternal nothingness. The system then asked if Jinwoo wished to delete the entire system. Without hesitation, he chose yes. A blinding light flashed, accompanied by mechanical clacks and whirs, dazzling his vision. Immediately, an immense aura enveloped all of Seoul, so intense that it shook the two monarchs. They felt the full weight of its power. Sillad, enraged, turned to the man protecting Jinwoo, the one he called a fragment of brilliant light. "Are you really going to bring ruin to this world with your own hands?" The man stood silently, his presence unwavering. Sillad pressed further. "Are you willing to risk your life to revive the Monarch of Shadows? Is this what the rulers want?" Rakan realized time had run out. They had no choice but to strike. Sillad readied his trident while the man raised his twin daggers, prepared to face the two monarchs. In the next moment, the monarchs charged in unison. They leapt toward the long-haired man, only for him to glow with a fierce yellow light, easily anticipating their attacks. He ducked beneath Sillad's trident swing, while Rakan's claw strike merely glanced off the weapon. Moving faster than the eye could follow, the man dashed towards Sillad. Before anyone could react, he drove 2 stabs into Sillad's stomach and slashed across his shoulder. Shock etched across the Monarchs' faces. Sillad, enraged, cursed the man, furious that he was reading the trajectory of every attack. Rakan commented under his breath, "This warrior, he's been through countless battles." The man strategically positioned himself behind the Monarch of Frost's spear, neutralizing every strike. Sillad inhaled sharply, preparing a massive frost attack from his mouth. But before he could unleash it, the man delivered a devastating upward kick, sending Sillad crashing into a building. Rakan lunged again, attempting to bite him, but the man stabbed through Rakan's open mouth, emerging near his nose. Rakan screamed in agony. Enraged, he created multiple explosions with sheer force, removing the dagger but leaving the wound visible. "I'll tear you to shreds," he roared. Before he could act, a tremendous aura struck him, pressing him into the ground. Looking up, he froze in disbelief. The source was Jinwoo. Rakan leapt back, terrified. From atop a nearby building, Sillad saw clearly through the smoke. "I'm not going to let him get us this time." He turned to Rakan. "Let's try again." But Rakan, sensing the overwhelming power, refused and said, "I give up." Sillad shouted at him, "After everything we've come through, have you gone mad?" Rakan only replied, "Don't you feel it? Mana, it's ringing out. The Monarch of Shadows is coming." Indeed, a purple aura enveloped Jinwoo, even under the icy restraints. The man protecting Jinwoo remained vigilant. Rakan refused to participate further. Sillad said he had promised to help, but Rakan paid him no mind. With a slash of the air, he created a path for escape. "I'll only fight the human form," Rakan said. "The real one is coming. No obligation remains." Sillad shouted in defiance. "Do you mean to run away? You're the king of beasts, for God's sake." Rakan only replied that he could not comprehend until he had faced the Monarch of Shadow's true power. Rakan escaped through the created path, leaving Sillad behind. "Cowardly fool," Sillad growled. "Behold the terror of Frost, you weakling." His hair rose, and a massive aura erupted. Driving his trident into the ground, he generated a whirlwind of crushing energy. Nearby hunters realized they had to retreat. The debris and vehicles trembled under the force. Sillad unleashed countless ice spikes toward Jinwoo, but the man deflected them all. Raising his hand, Sillad generated an enormous ice block above the city, intending to crush both Jinwoo and the Monarch of Shadows in bitter cold for eternity. The man looked up, alarmed by the sheer scale of the destruction. Ice spikes continued to rain down, slicing into his arm. Then a massive shard descended, large enough to level the entire area. Then a shadow dashed from Jinwoo, intercepting the falling ice with a claw strike, shattering it. Beru, Jinwoo's shadow general, emerged. Another shadow appeared, Commander Igris, stepping forward with his sword to protect Jinwoo and the man. "Do not call yourself a king," Igris warned the Monarch of Frost. Sillad froze, stunned that the shadows had broken his spell. Realizing the commander-level shadows had regained their strength, his eyes widened in disbelief. Finally, Jinwoo revealed himself now as the Monarch of Shadows. The ice surrounding him shattered under his overwhelming aura. "This is why prophecies cannot be trusted," he declared. He looked towards Sillad and asked if the beast had run away, referring to Rakan. Meanwhile, Beru and Igris knelt in respect as Jinwoo's aura swelled even further, forming black wings along his back. The chapter ended with Sillad's face etched in fear as Jinwoo said coldly, "I don't recall giving him permission to leave." The chapter opens with terror etched across Sillad's face as Jinwoo calmly states that he does not recall ever giving Rakan permission to leave. Sillad was seized by a paralyzing shock, raw, electrifying fear that sliced through the stillness of the battlefield. It felt as though an insurmountable wall stood between his power and Jinwoo's. As he stared at him, Sillad finally understood. The difference between them was far too great. Jinwoo paid no attention to the Frost Monarch standing before him. Instead, he slowly closed his eyes and turned inward, drawing upon his power. A sphere-like aura spread from him as his senses expanded outward, sweeping across the battlefield, then across all of South Korea, until it covered the entire Earth. Suddenly, Jinwoo opened his eyes and spoke. "There!" He had found the Beast Monarch. Sillad instinctively sensed an opening. He knew this chance would never come again. The gap in their power was overwhelming, yet he could not believe Jinwoo had taken his eyes off his opponent. If he missed this moment, death would be inevitable. Raising his spear, Sillad poured every ounce of his strength into it. A violent blue aura wrapped around the weapon as he resolved to end everything with a single blow. With a roar, he hurled the spear toward Jinwoo with all his might. The spear closed in, but Jinwoo merely looked at it, utterly calm. He raised one hand and caught the spear with his bare palm. Cracks spread instantly through the weapon before it crumpled and shattered. Sillad froze in disbelief. How is that possible? In that moment, realization struck him. He finally understood what Jinwoo was capable of. The true power of the Monarch of Shadows, the greatest fragment of brilliant light, the king who stood above all other monarchs. Jinwoo spoke again. I'm going to save you for last. I'll take care of the beast first. Deep within a forest, the fleeing beast monarch hid in silence. Death felt as though it were closing in on him. He cursed himself for arguing with the frost monarch. It had delayed his escape. Now, all he could do was lie low until the Dragon King arrived. Then fear overtook him. A familiar aura surged nearby. Before he could react, Jinwoo was already standing beside him. The beast monarch's body refused to move. Terror crushed him. I smelled death in the air. He collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed by the absolute, inescapable difference in their strength. Based on his past experiences, he knew just how horrifying the Shadow Monarch power was. His instincts screamed at him to submit. Bowing deeply, he addressed Jinwoo as the Monarch of Shadows. The King of Beasts declared that he had no wish to fight him. He begged forgiveness for his sins and pleaded to be accepted as an ally. He warned that the Dragon King would soon descend upon the land with his army. When that happened, he promised that his beasts would assist Jinwoo. All right, Jinwoo replied. Rakan smiled faintly as he bowed, but inside, his thoughts were filled with contempt. Jinwoo was a fool. He was not the real one. If he truly were the real Monarch of Shadows, he would never even consider forgiveness. Not after his betrayal. Not after he had tried to destroy the vessel of his descendant. Rakan believed he had only been spared due to humanity's warmth and stupidity. All he had to do was wait for the king of berserk dragons to arrive. When the time came, he would gladly tear Jinwoo's corpse to shreds and devour it. Feigning loyalty, Rakan continued to speak, but Jinwoo cut him off. Before that, Jinwoo said, "You need to pay for what you did." He then placed his hand over his chest. 5 of your claws tore through my chest. If you can endure just 5 attacks, I'll forgive you. Rakan froze. Rage erupted from him as a violent aura exploded outward, creating a shockwave accompanied by a deafening roar. How dare you toy with me? I am the King of Beasts. He warned Jinwoo that even if this was his end, Jinwoo would not be safe either. Jinwoo remained calm. A dagger formed in his right hand. Before Rakan could react, Jinwoo vanished, leaving behind dark purple trails. In an instant, he slashed. Rakan's arm was severed. Only after it flew through the air did Rakan realize what had happened. For more, Jinwoo said coldly. The scene shifted back to Sillad, whose expression was still frozen in shock. He glanced at Beru, calling him a bastard aligned with the rulers, as Beru healed Hunter Thomas Andre. Suddenly, a slash narrowly missed Sillad. Igris stood before him. That one is troublesome as well, Sillad muttered. He recognized him, one of the 2 wings of the Shadow Army, the Soldier of Death. It seems he can now use his full power, Sillad noted. How inconvenient. Still, he reasoned that the shadows could be healed only until the Shadow Monarch's power ran out. But they cannot recover the magic consumed by his manifestation. Igris slashed again. Sillad evaded with a leap and sneered. Don't waste your efforts. How long do you think you can last against me? Suddenly, Igris stopped and stabbed his sword into the ground. From beneath Igris' robe, Jinwoo emerged, tossing 2 fangs onto the ground. The King of Beasts is dead, Jinwoo said. Sillad was stunned. Killed in mere minutes? Jinwoo declared that the Monarch of Plagues, the King of Beasts, and even the Frost Monarch standing before him would die, stating that their fall would serve as a warning to the rest. Furious, Sillad screamed and unleashed a storm of ice spikes. But 2 daggers suddenly pierced his chest. Still resisting, Sillad tried to generate ice magic from his mouth. only for Jinwoo to appear instantly before him and clamp a purple aura-covered hand over his face. With his other hand, Jinwoo slashed upward. "The King of Beasts died on the 4th strike," Jinwoo said. "How long will you last?" Sillad screamed as the ice encasing him cracked and shattered. His true form was revealed before his body began to disintegrate, vanishing into thin air. Above, the sky still glowed with an eerie purple light. Beru called out to Jinwoo, but Jinwoo was focused on something else. He searched for the one who had protected him earlier. That presence had disappeared. Jinwoo noticed the dagger left behind. Elsewhere, blood streaked the wall of a ruined building. The man who had saved Jinwoo leaned against it, barely breathing as his body slowly crumbled. So this was the price of becoming a vessel for a ruler. "It's over, this is it," he thought. Suddenly, a dagger struck the ground near his foot. He looked up in shock. Jinwoo stood there. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice you leaving like that?" Jinwoo asked. "Were you planning to disappear again without a word?" The chapter ends as Jinwoo looks at the man and calls him calmly, "Father." Before we wrap up this arc, if you enjoyed the video, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Thank you. The chapter begins with the backstory of Jinwoo's father. Inside a gate, an enormous rift that had torn open reality and unleashed demonic beasts, he had fought his way through countless enemies. After finally defeating the dungeon boss, the rule was clear: escape the gate within 1 hour. But he could not. With all paths of escape sealed, he became trapped within the dimensional rift. While imprisoned there, the rulers lent him their strength and made a request. He was to stop the Monarchs, especially the Shadow Monarch, who was soon to be born. Having lost all means of escape, he had no choice but to accept. He returned to Earth as the emissary of the rulers, bearing an unbearable responsibility. Yet, in the end, he could not fulfill that duty. Although he knew that the worst calamity facing humanity resided within Jinwoo's body, he was powerless to act. All he could do was watch from afar. Meanwhile, the rulers, whose sole objective had once been to prevent the complete advent of the Shadow Monarch, began to change their stance. Eventually, the brightest fragment of brilliant light issued a new order: protect the Shadow Monarch. They had realized that to stop the Monarch's plan of total destruction, they needed the Shadow Monarch's power. Only he could oppose the coming army of the Dragon King, whose soldiers would arrive before the armies of heaven. It was a tremendous gamble. No one knew whether the Shadow Monarch would side with humanity or the Monarchs. But now, the result was clear. That was the reason Jinwoo's father had helped him, though he never wanted that truth to be revealed. Only one word left Jinwoo's lips. As tears streamed down his face, he whispered, "Dad." His father hesitated before asking softly whether Jinwoo hated him. Jinwoo answered honestly, "Yes, sometimes." His father apologized. Jinwoo explained that when he first became a hunter, he had been on the brink of death countless times. Each time he barely survived, desperate just to see his mother and Jina again. His father's face would appear in his mind, and every time it happened, he hated him. Hearing this, sorrow filled his father's expression, but Jinwoo's next words shocked him. "Even so, I missed you," Jinwoo asked quietly. "What about you?" His father could not answer right away. He could only stare at Jinwoo, still stunned. Jinwoo asked again, his voice trembling, "Did you miss us?" Tears finally fell from his father's eyes as he nodded. "I missed you all the time. Even though I couldn't see you, I was happy just being able to watch you from afar." As he spoke, his body began to crack and slowly fade. Still, he forced himself forward and wrapped Jinwoo in an embrace. "You've grown well," he said. Jinwoo's tears continued to fall, mixing with the heavy rain pouring down around them. Then anger surged through Jinwoo. He clenched his fists and demanded to know whether the rulers had controlled his father, whether they had simply used him and thrown him away. Tears remained in his father's eyes, but he smiled gently. "They didn't control me. They only gave me a chance to choose." And he had chosen to protect Jinwoo. He had no regrets. Not a single one. He admitted that he wanted to talk longer, that he wanted to stay with him just a little more. In his final moments, he said, "I'm sorry that I couldn't be a great father to you." His body vanished completely within Jinwoo's hands, leaving only golden ashes drifting into the air. Jinwoo clenched his fists. Then, a powerful cry echoed across the land. The Shadow Monarch's scream shook the world. Elsewhere, Jinwoo's mother stood by a window with Jina, staring into the rain. Tears filled her eyes as she suddenly called out to her daughter. "Let's move now." She felt it. They could finally move forward. Standing alone in the rain, Jinwoo looked up at the sky and roared, "Listen up, Monarchs. You will pay for what happened today. Do you hear me?" The day the Shadow Monarch's outcry shook the world was the day the prelude to war began. Afterward, the aftermath of the battle was revealed. Hunter Thomas Andre was reported to be out of life-threatening danger. Ambulances filled the streets, transporting the injured to hospitals. The monsters that had massacred civilians were no longer moving. Only traces of ash remained where they once stood. Jinwoo returned home, holding his mother and Jina tightly. At the battlefield, hunters Choi Jong-in and Baek Yoon-ho spoke quietly. Jong-in noted that Yoon-ho had not looked well earlier and asked if he had calmed down. Yoon-ho replied that he needed to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead before talking. Jong-in jokingly offered him a mind-calming pill, asking whether his heart had stopped racing. Nearby, Chairman Woo Jin-shul surveyed the devastation. "I guess it's over now," he murmured. He recalled Jinwoo's enemies, a beast-type demonic creature, the woman who attacked the city, and the White Walker. He remembered Jinwoo's words at Chairman Go's funeral, that he would personally kill the demonic beast responsible. Only now did Jin-shul realize the White Walker had been the one Jinwoo was referring to. Lowering his head, tears fell as he whispered, "Thank you." Soon after, the Hunter Bureau announced that the monsters responsible for the destruction were unidentifiable demonic beasts. The damage to the city was catastrophic. However, the true calamity was yet to come. The massive purple gate enveloping the entirety of Seoul. Beneath it stood countless hunters from all over the world, waiting. Among them was Liu Jigang, China's national-level hunter. Smiling as he looked up, he remarked, "So this is the Colossal Gate. It's even bigger than I heard." He added that even if every hunter in the world gathered, they could all be swallowed by it and vanish. Thomas Andre, also present, muttered, "It'll start soon." Chairman Jin-shul realized that this was the first time so many hunters had assembled in one place. His expression hardened as he wondered how many of them would survive. At the very front stood Jinwoo, his gaze fixed upward, his expression grim. Hunter Cha Hae-in approached him and commented that she had never seen him look this nervous before. Jinwoo replied calmly, "Is that so?" But in his mind, he knew the Colossal Gate would open soon. Cracks began spreading across the gate as everyone held their breath. "It's coming. Everyone, prepare for battle." Black figures began emerging. "It's a huge army, a massive force. Get into position. We'll exterminate the demonic beasts." But Jinwoo froze. Staring at what emerged, he whispered in shock, "That's..." The figures pouring out of the gate looked exactly like his shadow army. Shadow soldiers, shadow dragons, and finally, a colossal shadow soldier emerged. A towering, black-armored figure crackling with purple energy. Jagged plates formed a void-black exoskeleton. Massive wings flared from its back, and a rune-etched blade hummed with lavender light. Purple lightning surged around its overwhelming presence. This marks the end of the Monarchs' war and sets the stage for the most awaited arc, the final war arc, where Sung Jinwoo fully awakens as the Shadow Monarch and faces his ultimate enemy, Antares, the King of Dragons and the strongest monarch. In a world-ending clash of shadow and destruction, only one will remain to decide the fate of all.